gone insane. An upside-down civilization that cannot be real. A world of madness and terror.
It's the Dana Gould Hour.
Trick or treat, trick or treat, trick or treat on Halloween. Trick or treat on Halloween. Never any tricks, but lots of treats on your Halloween station. Here's a salutation. A musical treat from your Halloween station. Happy Halloween!
Today's show is brought to you, fittingly, by Casper. Not the friendly ghost, the wonderful mattress. Get $50 towards any mattress purchase by visiting casper.com/Dana and using the promo code Dana. It is that most wonderful time of the year, and we're going to get right to it. It's Halloween, and we have a grab bag of tricks and treats for you, so there's no reason to dilly-dally. We have three big guests. The first is Ken Reed of the excellent podcast TV Guidance Counselor. Ken Reed is a pop cultural encyclopedia whose knowledge base dwarfs even my own. He is also hilarious and a great guy to boot. Joel Hodgson of Mystery Science Theater 3000 fame is here. Joel and I are going to talk about the original Mystery Science Theater, the new incarnation of Mystery Science Theater on Netflix with Jonah Ray. Joel and I have been friends for a long, long time, and we're going to hike back into the Comedy Museum for a segment or two. I think you'll like it. And lastly, but most certainly not leastly, of Ed Wood and An American Werewolf in London fame and countless other brilliant films, makeup genius Rick Baker is here. I interviewed Rick at Cinefamily here in Los Angeles after a special screening of the film Ed Wood. And out of that conversation came this recording. So it is presented in that context. We're in a theater, there's an audience, we've just watched Ed Wood, and there are some questions from the audience as well. It's a really great conversation, and Rick was really very kind and indulgent. Now, before we get to the show, let me just do a little bit of business. This November 10th, 11th, and 12th, I, Dana Gould, will be performing at the Punchline in San Francisco, California. My old stomping grounds. The weekend of November 18th and 19th, I will be in Houston, Texas, as part of the Come and Take It Comedy Takeover. For details and ticket links, please visit the Performing Live page at danagould.com. And finally, please, this November 2nd, tune in to IFC's new horror comedy, Stan Against Evil, starring John C. McGinley of Scrubs, Janet Varney of You're the Worst, and written and created by yours truly. It is scary, it is funny, and if you enjoy this podcast, then it is definitely worth a look. Stan Against Evil, premiering Wednesday, November 2nd at 10 p.m. on IFC, with a 2-show double shot and a special sneak preview of our first episode at 10 p.m. on Halloween night. But for now, gotta go.
A retired sheriff.
All I want to do is nothing, and I can't even do that.
The new sheriff.
I think we're cursed.
And 172 demons who killed sheriffs.
Right to the head. Never fails.
Stand Against Evil, Wednesdays at 10, starts November 2nd on IFC.
It's a gas. It's the Dana Gould Hour.
Very funny comedian. You can get his CD, The Vanity Project. You also have a wonderful podcast called TV Guidance Counselor from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Fellow masshole, Ken Reed.
This is the sound of my voice.
How are you, Ken?
I'm doing good. I'm out here, which is always nice.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, you're missing, it's fall in New England. You're missing apple picking. You're missing foliage.
Yep. That is the best and only probably good season in New England.
Yeah. The month of October in New England is awesome. Although there were times where it would get so cold on Halloween, you would be like a pirate in a parka.
Yeah.
And you just flash at the door. I'm a fucking pirate. Give me a second.
I'm an Alaskan pirate. Yeah. Or it was always raining too. So like whatever makeup you had became like dumped at the prom that.
Right.
So like, no, I'm a dumped at the prom vampire. Yeah. That's why my mascara is running.
I am a cowboy who's going to a masquerade party as Kurt Russell from The Thing.
Yeah. I remember one Halloween, it was kind of like sleeting out, and I think I was supposed to be, I think I was dressed as Pennywise from It. I was like maybe 8 years old, and it started raining. So
I was hoping you were going to say Penny Robinson. I was going to go, you
Robinson.
Dirty little man.
Yeah, I was like, ooh, give me some candy. But my makeup started running, and this woman was like, what are you? And I said, I'm a clown who gets fired out of the cannon, and it just didn't go well. And she was horrified because it was inaccurate, because clowns don't go out of cannons. It's a different job.
That's true. That's a stunt work, and that's a union violation. They cannot do it.
She dropped a dime on me.
It would be good if you had like 40 clowns in one cannon.
Yeah. They just keep firing out.
Yeah. Well, that's the carnival arms race that the Soviet Union and the United States carnivals had in the 1950s.
Like a clown Gatling gun.
There was a cannon clown gap that we have to close.
Well, that's what CPS stood for, is clowns per second. It's like a 700 clowns per second rating.
They fired at 700 clowns per second. Oh man, that's good. So now, when you grew up in Melrose, was Halloween? Halloween was obviously huge for you.
Yeah, enormous. Like I would plan out my route where we had in the days before the internet,
right?
If pizza shops, which were the only people who needed to know their way around the city, really had every pizza shop had a giant, well-detailed map of the city. At least in Massachusetts, I don't know if that was here, but it was like more than the police station. They had it looked like just this centralized giant map with quadrants.
Yeah. And because it was Massachusetts, it said below on the map, knock yourself out, shithead.
Yeah. It was like, gets real fucking dark in this neighborhood. Not after 6, stuff like that. Yeah, because there's Italians there.
Yeah, here's the neighborhoods we don't go into after dark.
I'm not delivering it. You come here.
No pizza and JP after 7 p.m.
Yeah, you call the Chinese food place for that shit. They'll deliver after there. They got no morals. So I noticed they were getting a new pizza map, or like an updated map, and I asked for their old one. So I had a strategic map of all the neighborhoods and house numbers, and I mapped out a route, like a prime route for Halloween. Right. And so my grandparents lived in the other side of town. Our house was kind of in the center of town. And what I did was I had my parents drop me at the edge of one side of town with a pillowcase.
Sure.
I made my way back to our house, dropped that pillowcase off, got a second pillowcase, and then made my way to my grandparents' house, where my parents then collected me.
Now, are you flying solo?
Oh, yeah. No, I had no friends that would go Halloweening. They would not go Halloweening with me. This was solo. Yeah, totally solo. Because
fantastic.
My parents would take my sister around, and she'd be like, I'm cute. And I was like, you guys are going to just hold me back. I have a schedule to keep. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Have you ever read the Dan Clowes cartoon Immortal Invisible?
Yes.
That's so funny. I have an original panel in my bathroom.
Yeah.
I love that story so much. For those of you unfamiliar with it, it's about a kid who goes out on Halloween in that year. It's just the best year. Certainly fascinating. When you're too old to go trick-or-treating, but you don't have a driver's license yet, and you're too young to do anything cool, and you're just in this weird social twilight. I don't know if that still applies to kids today with the internet. I think all kids by that age have been to 4 gangbangs.
Oh, easily.
I don't know I don't know.
Well, if they've gotten through elementary school, sure.
There are 14-year-old kids on Tinder.
Yeah, and that's why they do that mischief, I think, because it's just like repressed rage of not being able to do anything actually fun,
and
but
they're
you
in a
can't get free
mask.
candy.
I mean, everything is just geared towards trouble.
Yeah.
And he just walks around town by himself on Halloween and has these philosophical
It
monologues.
is a heavy
It's really,
night. That's when you sort of think about your own mortality and you're aware of puberty for the first time
Yes,
in a
it
way
is,
that
yeah.
like of aging for some reason more than Christmas or any other holiday, because Halloween is such a kid focused holiday where you're sort of empowered to go collect the things yourself that when you realize you can't do it anymore, it's like the
you're-
first time.
And you're too old to do the thing that you kind of want to do.
Yeah.
And you're too young to be doing the thing you feel you should be doing.
Right.
It's a really frustrating
I
time.
think sort of coming of age stories set on Halloween night are my favorite sort of teenage youth, like television episodes or any, like even Highway to Heaven, which was a show I did not normally enjoy. I would call that a deathbed confession show because every episode it was like some guy in his deathbed who was like, I murdered a town and I'm sorry. But there's one that Michael Landon.
I never hugged my bird.
Yes.
Oh, that's not a big deal.
I destroyed the Special Olympics single-handedly and the electric car. And then he would be redeemed and whatever. But they always had weird Halloween episodes, and Michael Berryman played Satan on Highway to Heaven. And there's one
Match.
obviously. There's one called I Was a Middle-Aged Werewolf. And Michael Landon wrote and directed it. And it's that very kid.
Please tell me it's about a bedwetting werewolf.
It's about a bedwetting werewolf.
For those of you who don't, for those of you who don't know, Michael Landon, Little Joe, and Pa from Little House on the Prairie, huge, at a time, possibly one of the most powerful people in television. Yeah. Produced Little House on the Prairie, which is a massive hit.
Yep.
And as a child, he was a bedwetter. Well into his teens, whatever it is, I think it's somnambulistic hyperpis.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. Hyperpistula.
Hyperpistula. And he did a very famous TV movie about it. ABC After School Special.
Yep.
Starring Lance Kerwin.
Yep. James at 15.
Called The Loneliest Runner.
Yeah.
About a kid that would have to run home from school every day.
Yeah.
Because his parents would try to shame him out of peeing the bed by hanging his pee sheets out the window.
Yeah.
And he would have to run home from school to take the pee sheets out the window.
Which is where we get the term the runs, which has since been applied to shit instead. Did you ever have parents, friends that would try to shame their kids in front of you? That was the most uncomfortable thing ever.
Yes. And it is one of those things that, the age of modernity has shined a light on about in addition to asking the victims of sexual assault what they were wearing. That's also now no longer something that we do. But it is and parents thought, certainly in my parents' generation, quite literally thought that was what you need to do.
Learn that lesson.
And as also spare the rod, spoil the child. Like, I had to hit him. I want him to learn.
But in your case,
these are things that were within these are things that I grew up with.
Right. But if they had spared you Rod Serling, you would have spoiled the child.
That's absolutely right. I was a 5-pack a day Todd. I was such a fan of the Twilight Zone. Anyway, Michael Landon.
Oh, yes.
That's our little urinary detour for the life of Michael Landon.
He wrote and directed this episode, and it's about this kid with like an abusive stepdad, and he's that age. He's that age where he's too old, but really not cool enough. And so he wanders around alone, and Michael Landon ends up, as in his angel form, ends up kind of keeping him company. And these kids come to kick his ass and take his candy. Michael Landon turns into a werewolf and chases them away. And they have all these stories about like growing
the
up.
werewolf just runs kids off his lawn.
Yeah. Get out of here. It's such a great episode.
And also for those of you who don't know, Michael Landon famously played I Was a Teenage Werewolf.
Correct.
So this is, hopefully it's the same character.
It is. It's the same makeup, and they show clips from the original in the movie. It's
I
in
really
the
have
show.
to watch that
It's a
now.
great Halloween episode. It's one of my favorites, and I always try to watch it every year. And then there's an episode of Adventures of Pete and Pete called The Halloweenies.
Oh, okay.
That's about the very same thing that really captures that vibe as well. That's always on the agenda.
I Was a Teenage Werewolf is an underrated film because is a really good movie, and it predates Buffy the Vampire Slayer by a good 4 decades in terms of using the supernatural as symbolism for the change that your body goes through during puberty.
Right.
And the emotional upheaval of that time of life. And I believe at one point a school bell triggers his transformation into a werewolf.
Yeah. It was like,
and it's also the look for people who haven't seen it. It's also the look that Michael Jackson has in the Thriller documentary.
Right.
It's the Letterman jacket.
Slightly less cat-like.
Well, not the werewolf makeup,
Yeah.
but the Letterman jacket.
The high school, the Archie kind of look he has.
Yeah, I
going
don't know
there.
where the cat thing came from. I want to be a werewolf, but I want to be a cat.
But also a cat, like a panther wolf.
Well, that was always my head scratcher about Peter Criss.
Yeah.
When they were developing the characters from Kiss, like, I'll be a demon. I'll be a glam rock love god.
Yeah.
I'll be a kitty.
Yeah, I'm from space. I'm a meow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Girls are going to throw tins of fish on stage and they see me.
Old ladies are going to eat my food because they can't afford anything else.
Ladies are going to eat my food.
Mr. Tomcat.
I'm not trick-or-treating at the old age home. They
No
just give out cat
way.
food and prescriptions.
It's got that tuna that's at Trader Joe's, and you're like, it says cat tuna, but it's a lot cheaper. Maybe it's the same tuna. I'll try it. I was wrong.
Mine had a fingernail in it.
Not a place to save money at
I ate some
all.
cat food tuna and it had an engagement ring in it.
Yeah, I Was a Teenage Werewolf was clearly the best of the I Was a Teenage movies, I think. Not counting, undoubtedly, the pornography that is under that title that I'm unaware
well, there's
of.
also I Was a Teenage Frankenstein, and Teenage Caveman with
Right.
the young Robert Vaughn.
And in the 80s, I Was a Teenage Zombie that had that Night Flight used to show all the time. Had a really good.
That's just somebody
indie
who
rock
died
soundtrack.
tragically young.
Yeah.
Not unlike Casper.
It's true. Didn't get to teenage years though. Sadly, never. I guess a prepubescent ghost is better than a pubescent ghost. That's the last thing you want.
It would be funny if there was like I was a teenage Gigi Allen, but it's Gigi Allen, but he becomes a werewolf. But when he transforms, he's actually quite lovely.
Yeah, everyone would rather have him be a werewolf because he has better manners and he's housebroken.
Yeah. Hello, nice to see you. I'm Gigi Allen. How are you?
Let's lay down some
Not enough of
tracks
me.
based on Dana's life.
We just Joel came over. We cut some tracks.
Very mellow. Very cool.
It was too hot for the candles, but I rolled the dice. I'm really glad I did.
Are we running now? We're
Yeah.
rolling? This is actually the show.
This is
We're
it.
Waded into
I'm
the
gonna-
show.
We're having a big bowl of peace right now. A brimming, steaming mug of mellow.
Joni Mitchell's swimming naked in Dana's pool right now. The guys from
It's with the vol-
CNR are dropping by.
It's a very
Graham
70s.
Nash.
It's a very yacht rock kind of day,
Yes.
but it's also filled with 70s here. It's like Joni Mitchell and Bear from BJ and the Bear are out back. No one can find Bear's trainer.
I got Ted Templeman coming over. He just produced the Little Feet album and wrecked it, by the way.
I got half the guys from Poco somewhere in the back room.
Yeah, we're going to exhume Graham Parker's body out in the desert later.
It is a chilly autumn day. He lied. Up above Mulholland Drive, here at Falcon Lair Recording Studios. Pardon my froggy voice. I had a panel yesterday at fittingly Monster Palooza.
You had a little too much to talk.
I had a little too much to
which
talk.
happens with Dana.
So yes, it's an occupational hazard and a psychological hazard. But I'm very healthy, and you'll have to just put up with my Waitesian bottom level today. And
Dana Gould got rained on by his own 38.
And the house flashed the nickel. Okay. Well, let me introduce my guest. My guest is, been a very dear friend of mine for a long, long time.
Yeah, we go way back to the Comedy Gallery back in Minneapolis.
Very instrumental in my career
Yeah, you've never told me that.
on the business side of my career.
Now you bring it up when we're on the microphone. Gotcha. I hear that. Okay. We're gonna have a lot to talk about today.
We had some, and I would say legendary figure in our
I'm going to
world
have a
of
lot
comedy.
to unfold about Dana today, too. How he came into my life, touched me.
Touched you the way I touch the way God touches a child through the hands of a priest. Please welcome Joel Hodgson.
Hey, y'all. This is Joel, and this is the sound of my voice. You're listening to the big one up in there. What do you call it again?
7 a.m. 7
a.m.
in sunny Southern California.
And I'm Cable and Pulley, his sidekick.
I still do those. When I go out on the road, you still got to do morning radio. And
Yeah. It's kind of like the way we were talking about local TV, the way it affected us when we were kids, and local radio is the same way. And I think it's going to revert back to that, actually.
Yeah.
But it is kind of cool. I do think they're just like these mainstays and they'll bloom again. But right now they're just like, holding the fort down.
Things are all cyclical and they all come back. Like, who would have thought vinyl would come back?
Right. And it's like, I think it's all based on food. Like everybody's going like, get to know your farmer. And it's like, well, what's going to happen? Well, you'll start doing local ads for local, restaurants, local dairies. It'll all come back and then they'll be in business again. So everybody's getting this kind of pride about where they live and looking out for, the environment rather than, we don't care if you ship it in from Chile, fine. It's different now. It's changing.
And I think we both grew up in relative. You didn't grow up in Minneapolis.
No, I'm from Wisconsin. I grew up in Green Bay. Yeah, mostly.
And I'm from the suburban Massachusetts. And it's funny. Like two of my favorite comedic things are SCTV and Fernwood Tonight, which are both small town television shows. Like SCTV was an entire fictional small town network.
Brilliant. Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah.
And there's just something very comforting about that and charming. I remember when I went where we lived, we got Boston television. And then when I went to UMass out in Amherst, you got Springfield television, which was much lower rent. I was
That's
like, what
great.
the hell is
I know.
These commercials?
You could feel it. Like every channel had its own like profile and personality. It's like drinking a glass of wine or something. You could kind of go, yeah, it just like it had a quality to it and
earthy undertones.
And exactly. And sometimes you'd just go, wow, they really got it right. Like the on-air promotion voice guy's killer, and or they have animated graphics or else they just would put up cards. I always loved those ones like we lived in Duluth for like a year and they'd always have these picturesque slides of lighthouses because it's on Lake Michigan, right? And so it's always that just kind of serene. You're watching DLUK, Duluth, Channel 13. It's just this. It gave you this mood of where you were,
right?
And
when you stayed home from school, it was always the same movie. You're watching McKenna's Gold.
Right.
It's always fucking McKenna's Gold.
Right.
But and all of those stations bought the chiller package.
Yeah,
and
it's
they all
amazing.
Had horror movie hosts.
Amazing,
and the fucking brilliant thing about SCTV was the horror host was Joe Flaherty, the great Joe Flaherty, as Count Floyd. But Count Floyd was also
the news guy.
The news guy.
I know. I'm embarrassed to say I just figured that out.
No, I didn't. Rob Cohen told me. I didn't even put it together myself.
I just went through all of them with my family. We watched them end to end.
They're so amazing.
And we even got the bootleg ones, the ones that Shout didn't put out. You can get them. So I
got to call Shout because I got to get those.
And those will have the old, the ones you find out there where people recorded them, it still has those little like moments of on-air promotion from like Canada. It's so great. But I didn't see that coming, and that knocked me out. That his name is Floyd.
Yeah, and
his last name is Floyd.
Floyd, like Turnbow or something.
And he has a story arc where he's an alcoholic and he has to go to treatment and he disappears.
Yes.
And Earl Camber takes over.
It's amazing.
It's so, those guys kill me. It's like, I can't get over how great they were. It's so amazing. And
here's 4 words I love that I get to say. Eugene Levy told me.
Yeah, amazing.
The hardest he ever laughed in his life was they were doing a commercial for 5 Neat Guys. And he didn't realize until they were cutting the bit that Joe's was playing his character drunk. And no one else knew it. And he goes, I'm looking at the footage and he's a step off on everything. He's late on everything. He's playing it drunk. He never told anybody. Nobody could even see him because they were like doing the 4 tops, like they were in a line doing the dance moves. God. And he just did it like a comedy grenade. Like, I'm going to do this now and no one's going to notice. But when they're cutting it later, they'll see it. And he goes, that was the hardest he'd ever laughed in his life.
The guy who gets me is Rick Moranis. Like, he's so clever. And the stuff, I heard he was like and I don't know if this is true, but supposedly it was a juggernaut in the writing room too.
I'm sure.
And it was, that stuff kills me. Like Jerry Todd is so
ahead of
wonderful,
its time. So ahead
wonderful.
Of its time.
And it's genius. It was just brilliant. And God, I can't get over it. And what was that thing that, not the Mackenzie brothers, but they did this other one where they were kind of like pig-like characters. They would like snort. And it was really
need Rob Cohen, our Canadian,
the
ambassador of our Canadian,
we got to bring him
content.
in on this. But it was so punk rock. It was just like completely crazy.
Yeah.
I got a lot from them with MST because when I watched it, I realized that, I mean, they were very ambitious, obviously, for a little, when they shot that stuff in Edmonton. And I know the production moved to like Toronto and back again or whatever, but they were so ambitious. But I realized they kept this kind of consistently low quality. You know, it didn't have these peaks and valleys. Like, it was just, they were really ambitious. They do like movie premieres. They do really wild stuff, but it all kept to the same production style.
Yeah, and they had a Bible. Like whether they had it or not, they created the universe and they stayed within its rules.
Yeah, and so
that's really inside baseball comedy talk.
I kind of got that from them, that if, like, I could realize this space show if I kept it all consistently low quality. If I think it starts to fall apart if you have peaks in quality, if you really high peaks or really low peaks. If you just agree on what the level is and you stick to it, then your chances are of succeeding as a story, a visual story.
The Star Trek movies are the same way. There's not a lot of variance in quality.
Yeah, right.
I love this movie so much. I've seen it endless time. I can't tell you how many times I've seen it. It gets me every time. Oddly, I auditioned for this movie to play the role of Paul Marco. And I think the film manages to survive Max Casella's performance. No, he's phenomenal. But I'm very well connected to this movie emotionally. And the heart of the movie is a relationship between Bella and Ed. And you believe that relationship, and you believe those actors are those people. Never for a nanosecond are they anything other than Ed Wood and Bela Lugosi. And when Martin Landau accepted the Academy Award for his performance, he thanked the person that co-created that role with him. Our guest tonight, please welcome Mr. Rick Baker. Rick is the vision in this go anywhere, do anything jumpsuit from Dicker and Dicker of Beverly Hills. Hi, Rick. Howdy. Nice job. Well, I think the first question is really obvious. Do you think Max Casella just ruins this movie?
You know, I would have loved to have seen you in this.
What I find amazing about the work, specifically in the Bela Lugosi character, is not what you did, but what you didn't do. What you didn't do, which we see so many times, and for some reason, especially when it's a president, they make a mask of that person and they stick it on the actor's face. Tell us a little bit about what you thought of when you went into Bela Lugosi, and was Martin Landau already cast in the role?
Yeah, I actually read about in the trades that Tim Burton was going to make a movie about Ed Wood, and that Martin Landau was going to play Bela. And I just said, I have to do this. I mean, I'm an Ed Wood fan. I'm a Bela Lugosi fan, you know. And they actually had a little picture in the trades of Martin, and I went, I don't know, you know. I mean, because, you know, Bela had such a round face, And Martin's is very rectangular and long, and
he could play John Carradine effortlessly.
But he also has a really full upper lip. Martin does, and Bela had no upper lip. It's just all skin up there. But the more I looked at it, I thought, I think I could do it. And when I read the script, I thought the script was great, and I just didn't want it to be, a man in a mask. I really felt he had to be real. And so I wanted to try to capture the essence of Bela, but not put too much on him, But believe me, I was tempted when I had his life cast, and I was sculpting it, and I had a life cast of Bela as well, and I said, well, maybe I should put rubber on the sides of his face, but I thought, no. It's a case of less is more in this.
Yeah, for some reason, it always ends up looking like Mrs. Doubtfire, not in a good way. And what you did, and what people don't understand is it doesn't have to look like a photocopy of Bela Lugosi. You're buying into this character. And the decision to make the film in black and white came later, because that also is, I think, a big part in it, because no one's ever seen Bela Lugosi in color.
Yeah, what happened is I did a test in my studio. Tim was there. I made up Martin, and we were looking at him on the monitor, and we were both kind of going, yeah, but it's just something's not quite right, And then I actually said, why don't let's turn the color off just to see how he looks in black and white, And we turned the color off on the monitor, and then all of a sudden went, that's, and it's because you're not used to seeing Bela in color for sure, And personally, I love black and white, so I was
and it was easy for Tim because major studios love releasing black and white films.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Well, the funny thing was, like I said, when I saw in the trades he was doing this movie, and I said I had to do it. I had met Tim right out of Art Center when he went to Art Center, not Art Center,
CalArts.
CalArts, yes. I'm sorry. Both Tim and Rick Heinrichs were at Disney, and
did you go to CalArts?
No, I didn't. I hardly went to school. I was in my bedroom making masks when I was a kid. So, yeah, thank you.
I also spent a lot of time in my bedroom isolated as a child.
I'm sure a lot of people in here did, actually. Yeah. But
making wonderment.
Kelly Kimball, who was the son of Ward Kimball, who was one of the 9 animators, the old man at Disney.
Right.
I did Thriller with her. She did costumes for Thriller. And,
okay.
And she said, you got to come meet these 2 kids that are right out of CalArts. And they go, they're really talented. And I went and talked to them, and we actually talked about a movie they were going to make called Trick or Treat, which never happened. But I had known Tim, and I kind of called up and I said, I have to do this movie. And I said, I'll do it for nothing if necessary, which kind of was necessary, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
But it paid off. It's nice to be able to do a makeup on a film that's actually good. So.
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. So let's go back. You're from Agora?
Nope, Covina.
Oh, okay.
Yep, which is east, 35 miles from here or something.
I think I know that from. Were you living there when you made Schlock?
I was, and we shot in Agora. And
that's how I know. I'm just hearing John Landis on a DVD track in my head.
Yeah. Actually, the house I grew up in the neighborhood I grew up in, was very much like, where they shot Bela coming out with She Smells the Roses and stuff. It was, a tract house, baby boomer house,
And those neighborhoods are still out there. You've got to go a little farther out than you used to, but yeah, they are still out there, and I find them oddly beautiful. Especially, I grew up in Massachusetts in a mill town in a house that was built in 1920, and to see row upon row of 50s tract housing for me is strangely exotic and beautiful. Because was Schlock or Octoman your first movie?
Octoman was my first movie.
And how old were you when you did Octoman?
I was 20.
Okay.
And I actually was a full-time student at the time. I was going to a junior college to try to stay out of Vietnam more than anything else. wasn't that. I mean, I wanted to stay in my bedroom and make masks.
Right.
But and I didn't think I could make very many masks in Vietnam. So I went to a local community college, and Octoman came about because it was originally going to be stop motion, and the very first job I ever had was at a stop motion place that made Gumby and Davy and Goliath.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I was 17.
Davy and Goliath has served a very culturally important role. There was a Christian stop motion show that would come on at 6 in the morning on Sundays.
God is everywhere, Davy.
Yeah, exactly. There was always Davy. Who's God? That was every episode. So you're doing stop motion. It's the early 70s.
Yeah, I actually didn't do stop motion there, but I made puppets for them and stuff. And
Right.
I met a bunch of animators with like same interests. The first guy I met, Doug Beswick, a little bit older than me by a couple of years, and we started talking about Ray Harryhausen and famous monsters. And Doug actually met Tor Johnson. And went to his house, and they saw Tor was selling Christmas trees at a Christmas tree lot or something.
That's amazing.
And some of his friends heard about that, and they all went there, and Tor invited him over. And so they went to Tor's house, and Tor was eating some ice cream or sherbet, and he was eating it, and it spilled on his lap. He went, "Oh, I dropped my sherbet." and the guys were like trying not to laugh at him, So
it is amazing when you watch the actual Plan 9. That at the beginning of the movie, most of the dialogue is by a guy who barely can speak English. You get the statement? Yeah. And then man and girl. It's just gorgeous. The fact that he was selling Christmas trees, I'm trying not to get too sidetracked by that.
In the 80s, they took that I Was a Teenage Werewolf model and went out of control with it after Teen Wolf, which was kind of also the same thing. But
I would say it's exactly
the same thing with more car surfing and not as good. One more subversive dick in the end of the movie there. But my favorite things were the rip-off ones of those that came in its wake, like My Demon Lover with Scott Valentine.
Oh, yeah, good pull.
He gets Pazatski'd. And then, wow. Yeah. And then on TV, there was a cartoon called Turbo Teen. Are you familiar?
I don't remember Turbo Teen.
But
I have one.
Yes.
Living there in the house.
Turbo Teen was in the wake of Teen Wolf, was like also Kids Like Knight Rider and Transformers. How can we make a show that is this? So it was about a kid who gets merged with his own car. Okay. And when he gets hot, he turns into his car.
Now, when he gets hot physically or hot sexually?
All. So inevitably in every episode, they need to turn him into a car to get out of their fix. So sometimes it would be like, let's make a fire, and he's hot. Then in an episode, a girl kissed him and he turned into a car. So, and then in an episode, you
gotta know your rules.
You need a rule.
People.
He's in a Mexican jail. This might be my favorite one. And someone gives him a burrito because Mexicans just carry those around. And it's a spicy burrito, so he turns into a car.
Now, if you were in a Mexican jail and someone says, I'm going to give you a burrito, odds are that does not mean lunch.
No, that's going to be a mission-style burrito.
A missionary style.
Yeah, missionary burrito. Yeah. What was the best costume you ever... I imagine you had an apes costume at some point.
No, I never. I don't think I ever did have an apes costume. I take that back. I did, made out of, but I don't think it was for Halloween. I think it was just for my
Christmas.
No, my 8mm Battle for the Planet of the Apes parody.
Yeah,
that I did with Vinnie Livingston, Alan Anderson, Donnie Cooper, and Rusty Putnam.
Excellent. Were you a Ben Cooper Collegeville kid? Or
totally. Totally. Yeah. No, I was. I'm all over the map.
Okay.
I had a Ben Cooper Frankenstein, and I had a Ben Cooper Captain America, but my mom was real DIY. Okay. Because we were poor. The coolest emotional costume I ever had was, my mother, when I was a kid, made me a Wolfman mask by going to the Woolworths. And I sound like I'm 700 years old.
And they wouldn't have blacks at the counter back then.
Not then, boy. Everybody knew their place. Yeah. And getting one of those, like those masks that were just nondescript. It was just like a bland face.
Yep.
And then she cut the collar up of her vicuna fur coat. Those cloth coats with the fur collar.
Oh, man.
She cut the collar up and glued the hair on that face, and that was my Wolfman.
It's like a Halloween gift to the Magi.
It really was. And it is one of the things that I would give a finger to still have.
Yeah, yeah.
Not mine, of course.
No,
a finger of
but
one of my
that's why
children.
you keep them here.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when I was in 7th grade, I gave out candy, and I did a Dick Smith Monster Makeup Handbook.
Nice.
Werewolf makeup for that. That was a good one.
Did other kids?
But I was also really fat at that age. So
Okay.
I was like Pugsley Talbot.
I've been cursed just to hand out candy for one night.
I've been cursed with handing out this delicious, succulent candy that I don't want to part with because I smother my feelings in it.
Did you see any kids your age that came to your door that
No.
were too old?
No.
Yeah, see, that was always my danger because, like, a lot of the kids that was the default in that age. Instead of going out, they would
Right.
hand out candy, and there was the danger that a kid
They'd
from
see
your
you.
grade would see you.
Yeah. Well, no, I was handing out candy.
Yeah, I know, but you could have been the guy. Who
Oh,
was
I could have been the guy that busted him?
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
No.
I remember we had this Walgreens that was just outside of town, far enough away that kids would go to buy condoms there because they thought no one would see me. That I know growing up.
Like, you're embarrassed that you're getting laid.
Yeah, that's what like high school kids. They're like, I
I'd
don't
be
want.
like buying condoms at 3:00 on a Wednesday. Well, I'd like
Yes.
some more condoms,
Yes,
please.
just fill her up. I'll
Yeah.
back the truck up.
I just can't seem to stay in them. No pun intended.
But I remember I was such a nerd that I would, November 1st is half price candy day, but more
Right.
importantly, it's half price Halloween decoration day.
Right, sure.
So I'm not just
and
going.
on a much lesser note, Dia de los Muertos.
Dia de los Muertos, yes. I commemorate the dead by getting bargains.
Exactly.
And
by discount orange plastic
discount orange
jack-o'-lanterns.
plastic. I might need this blood. But I would hit up all the like I would carve out a day. This I'm like 16, and I'm like, I'm gonna go to all the Walgreens, like every store, so I
Right.
can get everything good. And by the time I'd hit up that Walgreens, I remember I saw this kid that I went to high school with, and he was buying condoms. And I was not a bully, but I was just like, "You're buying condoms, ah!" And he was embarrassed, and I literally had a cart full of like Snoopy. Like I was like, this kid had like a box of condoms, and I'm like, you loser! I got this fucking great pumpkin for 50% off.
50% off. While you're out getting laid,
Yeah, but
I'm
that
going to be
was-
stocking up on Halloween decorations, loser.
Yeah, I don't even like Good and Plenty's, but I got plenty of them. But this kid was embarrassed, and I was like, that's the teenage condition. Like, it's something you should probably be like, I'm way cooler than you of. Just get someone calling you out on anything in public. You're immediately just like, oh, dear God.
There's a weird mirror to that. And I may have told this story before. I remember this so clearly. I'm walking down Commonwealth Avenue with my then girlfriend, Mary Beth Begley.
Yeah, Bags,
who was a waitress at Play It Again Sam's.
Oh, is that where you met her?
Yeah, of course. For the first, 90% of the numbers I've pulled as women, the conversation started with, "You're a really great waitress.
Yeah.
How long have you been here at the club?" "I'm Talkie the Clown."
I can do 700 CPS.
But and we were going to see Lost in America, which she did not like, and thus the relationship was doomed.
First and last date.
But we're walking down the street together on a date. And a car full of guys drives by and goes, "Queer.
Yep.
Let's just unpack this." You're all jammed up against each other in a small car. And I'm on a date with a woman. How am I the bad guy here?
But I bet you felt bad in the moment. Like the logic might have not kicked in.
I wasn't cool enough yet.
Yeah. You were just like, he's right. I'm cool.
"Oh, they're lucky I don't."
Yeah, in logic, you're like,
"You're
wait.
lucky I don't beat up that car."
Yeah. You're lucky my chick's here. I always pictured some Boston asshole who like hires a woman to be with him all the time just so he won't fight anyone. like some sort of weird escort. Like, if she wasn't here, that's like just her job, just to be there so that there isn't.
And the girl's
excuse
like,
not to
"No, you
fight."
can fight him. That's fine."
No, please do. He's trying to rob us. You're fucking dead,
You're lucky.
man.
You're fucking lucky.
Just if fucking Kelly wasn't here, you would have been.
That warmth that you're talking about, that positive vibe, is also a big part of Mystery Science Theater. Like, there's a lot of affection in how you make fun of these movies. It's not hateful.
Yeah.
Like the Golden Turkey Awards was kind of snide.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think Mystery Science Theater is snide.
Yeah, it's funny because the Golden Turkey Awards was a big influence on me. I remember reading it in college and saying...
Well, it was snide about Ed Wood.
Yeah, and I remember reading it in college and saying, why isn't anybody making a show with these movies? So it kind of was inspirational for me. But I think that was kind of the first position you kind of had to have, because it was the idea of an ironic viewing is kind of radical.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I ever really understood it was through the Turkey Award. And they had to conceptualize it. They had to say, well, you know how they give an Academy Award for the best picture? We're going to give an award for the worst picture. And because they conceptualized it, made it really simple, guys like me could read it and go, oh, that's right. There's these bad movies. That's right. And I think I just got really lucky because the people just suddenly, I think because of cable, we suddenly had this expanded bandwidth and all these movies were available and we could watch great movies, bad movies. It was all there. And so I just think I got lucky from that. But ironic viewing also came from like art house cinema. Like there were always like Rocky Horror is like that. Parts of What's Up Tiger Lily is a little like that. But they would also be showing
a very hard movie to watch the more you know about.
Oh yeah, yeah, and
in retrospect,
the other thing was they were showing Plan 9 from Outer Space at the art house cinema, and when I was in college, they were showing Robot Monster. So it was there. It was kind of in the ether. I didn't like figure that out. It was just kind of, I absorbed it from those sources, you know.
But those movies, I know to me and to you probably, there's a Muppet aspect to them that, you know, those movies were your companions when you were 12.
Yeah, they were really special. Yeah, really special because when you grew up around the time we did, there just wasn't that much access to it. And when it happened, it was like winning the lottery or something. Like, holy cow, there's a monster movie on and I have 2 hours I don't got to be in school. I can watch this. I can absorb it. And so we were talking about Famous Monsters too.
Famous Monsters magazine was sort of the companion to all of that.
Yeah. And that was where, like, you could even see a movie, but the idea of looking at pictures from that movie was unheard of. And suddenly, through Famous Monsters, you could just kind of study the images and go, well, how did they do? Like, how did Lon Chaney do his makeup in London After Midnight? Like, what was it? You know, and how did he get that face? And they'd sometimes hint at it, but you could really, he'd print a lot of the movie stills and a lot of the lobby cards, and it was your only chance to be alone with these images while they were frozen. Like prior to that, you'd see the movie, but how could you get a picture of it?
You couldn't capture it at all. You couldn't capture it at all.
You could maybe send away for that King Kong poster, maybe send away for a Wolfman poster, but other than that, the images themselves weren't available. You had to it was weird. Occasionally there was a book with them, but it seems absurd. It seems absurd in this age to talk like this, but it was really clear that, like, even 2001, I don't think I saw 2001. I knew a lot about 2001, but I don't think I saw it till I was in college, and it came out when I was like 7 years old. So it's like you'd hear about it, you'd see images from it, but I couldn't ever see it, you know?
Right, yeah.
It was weird.
And it's also weird when you grow up liking that stuff before the internet, you know, there were very few ways to meet your group, your herd, your community. And Famous Monsters magazine, if you were a monster movie kid, was sort of the universal secret handshake.
Forey Ackerman, kind of is the architect of nerd culture.
Yes.
In a way, because he saw it coming. He invented cosplay. I think he coined the term sci-fi. He was like invented. He spoke Esperanto, which is our language. We inherited Esperanto now. We all speak it fluently. But
he was a nudist.
He was a nudist.
We've
way
all
ahead
been nude
before all of us. He pioneered it. So he kind of saw that coming, and he just kind of saw he kind of saw it before anybody else that it was adorable, that it was like this really fantastic world, and he kind of found a way to canonize it in Famous Monsters, and it, like you said, it was this kind of language that we'd like kind of look at and start, because he was funny too. Like, he knew that looking at he'd write funny comments. If there was a monster and a woman screaming, he would write funny things that were kind of wry, and that kind of came with the whole package. Was that loving monsters is funny.
I remember a weird pun of his. And for those of you who don't know, Famous Monsters was a monthly magazine during the 60s, 70s, and 80s. That if you're a monster kid, you got it. Yeah. And before the internet, it was how you tapped into this community. Yeah. And there was a woman. It was a still of Janet Leigh in the shower from Psycho, and she had her head in the water, and the comment was "shampoo, son of real poo." Which I thought was really funny. I know. That was really funny.
I know. It was amazing. So,
but that
seems like he got to it. So,
but that stuff, which was such a niche, thing when you were a kid.
Like if it's
now runs show business. Every movie franchise.
And if the only option for you, if you weren't into sports, was to be into academics and be into school. Well, what if you didn't want to do that? What was there? And there was this little place, like movies that you could kind of park and go, like, let's talk about what we know about 2001. Like, I remember being a little kid and in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, and they did this thing during the summer where they'd have what they called parkies, and they had these sheds and they had a lot of games. And so they were basically there to check out games and run volleyball games and have sports equipment so that the kids could play. But I remember sitting there, these older kids were both talking about, they were talking about Night of the Living Dead, and they were talking about 2001: A Space Odyssey. I think they saw a double feature.
That's a weird double feature.
I know, but I think, or they had both, and I got them.
They both came out in 68.
I got them kind of mixed up, but I do remember them talking about the Night of the Living Dead, and also the thing with the Star Child,
right? And
him becoming an old man. And I just remember thinking, what could be more great? What could be more amazing than I mean, just it was movies used to be like an oral tradition back before videotape, back before cable. You'd see a movie and then you'd kind of talk about it and explain it to somebody else. It became a story you would tell, and lots of times when I'd have a babysitter, I'd go, have you seen any movies? Can you tell me about the movies that you've seen? And the woman, the young girl would go, "Oh yeah, I saw Old Yeller. I'll tell you about Old Yeller." And so I'd lay there and they'd tell me the movie of Old Yeller.
Oh, that's really interesting.
And so again, it seems absurd now, but that was the world we kind of inherited.
Where
and
now
we were
it's like, literally, it's like, now, have you seen Old Yeller? Yes. And within 3 minutes, you can watch it on your phone.
Yeah. So it seems really absurd, but for some reason it was this, like, it kind of seeped into your world in these funny ways.
Yeah, there is a shorthand among people. It's sort of like there are people who know who Forrest Ackerman is, and then there are people, and it's like a secret handshake. It's like I know, like I've had so many meetings. Like, well, I grew up, I know who Forrest Ackerman is. Oh, okay, great, and it saves you 4 hours of conversation.
Oh no, it's great working. I mean, Landis, Dante, Tim Burton. There's definitely a shorthand. You can say, it's like Invasion of the Saucer Men, and they know what you're talking about. You say that to Barry Sonnenfeld, and it's like, what?
Oh, really? I would think that he would know.
He goes, I never seen a science fiction film.
Oh, wonderful. That explains.
But he's great.
So
I mean,
much.
He makes great films, I think so.
That is amazing. I didn't know that he wasn't. I just assumed that he was incredibly well versed in that. But there's an element of Ed Wood that is in also other films made by, we talked about Joe later. Matinee, I think, is is sort of the sister film to Ed Wood in a very strange way, and An American Werewolf in London, which was a big watershed film for you and John Landis, the love of the genre is palpable, and it comes off the screen. But was American Werewolf in London for you? Was that the watershed, or was King Kong really the one that?
Well, King Kong was, I think.
What movie was it? Let me rephrase it properly. What movie was it that made all the other makeup artists in town go, "Who? Who is this? Who?"
Well, I mean, I think Werewolf was probably the one that really put me on the map. I mean, Kong was the first time I think I got any like big publicity, and it was that basically came about. I mean, actually, Landis was over at my house and said, some Italian idiot's going to remake King Kong. Can you believe that?
I can't imagine John Landis being that opinionated.
Well, I don't think he used the word idiot, actually.
Yeah, I don't think.
But it was a much worse word.
Yeah, no, I know. I know, Mr. Landis.
But I said, they're going to. I was the one that said idiot. I actually said they're going to get some idiot and put him in a gorilla suit, and I was so right.
How did that come about? And was there ever a moment where you were in the suit going, "Oh, fuck me"?
Was there ever a moment where I didn't say, "Oh, fuck me"? I thought I couldn't believe that somebody, to me,
we all live in the world. We all have to live.
And King Kong's a classic. I couldn't believe they're going to do it, and then I was so against it. But then somehow they found out that I made gorilla suits, and I got a call, and I went and talked to them, and I brought some stuff and talked to them about. I brought some arm extensions and a little sculpture I did of a gorilla, and they were saying, well, this is different. This is not like the old shitty movie. This is going to be like a disaster movie, because disaster movies were big. That's why they hired John Gillerman, who did Towering Inferno and stuff. And
written by Lorenzo Semple.
Yeah,
whose big credit was the Batman TV series.
Yeah, which should be a clue right there. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and who made My Friend's Wife Maria.
Oh, really?
Semple.
But the no, I lost track of what I was saying.
You're talking about King Kong, and it was a disaster movie. They're going to shoot it like a big 70s disaster movie.
Anyways, I mean, I just thought, they wanted it to be Kong to be more of an ape man. And I said, no, you can't do this. Kong, if anything, is a super gorilla. It should be a gorilla on steroids, not more man-like, And I was 25 years old, and I've always been very opinionated, And,
sure.
And it's like, it just kind of came to me, and I was watching this movie, and Vincent D'Onofrio being Orson Welles and saying, talking about having a vision and it's worth fighting for, and my career's been that. I mean, I'm surprised I've ever been successful, because I'm not a yes man by any means, and if someone asks me to do something I think is wrong, I fight for what I think is right,
Right.
So
well, that's what an artist does. I mean, and clearly you.
But I thought, well, I'll convince them that it should be a gorilla, and anyways, I didn't totally win, but the reason I ever got any publicity, which is why I started this whole story on that, is I'm sitting in this gorilla costume. I'd put it on in the morning and wear it all the way to the end of the day. I'd take it off at lunch and put it back on. And sometimes I would be sitting in the costume for like 4 hours, totally suited up, hard scleral contact lenses that cover my whole eye. Sitting there with the E fan blowing on me, sweating like crazy, And one day, John Gillerman comes up and says, "There's a reporter here from Time magazine that's going to do a big feature article on our film, but we want them to believe that it's a big robot, and so if he comes and asks you what you're doing, don't say anything." And it's like, John, I got a fucking gorilla suit on. I mean, well, what am I going to tell him? I'm like an enthusiastic craft service guy it's like,
I'm a teamster.
That would have worked. So what they did stupidly is, they showed him a whole bunch of footage, which was all me in the gorilla costume. And then they go, now we're going to take you to the mill where they're building the big robot Kong. So they took him to the mill and showed him this thing under construction that was nowhere near finished. And then the reporter, who wasn't a complete idiot, said, well, why don't you show me the one that's working? Because I want to see the one that I saw on the film. And then they went, oh, shit. So it came out that, the King Kong was really a guy in a gorilla suit. So it says, 5'6" actor, 5'6" makeup artist Rick Baker is playing a gorilla, which really pissed me off because I'm 5'9" almost.
Yeah, you're taller than I am. Yeah.
But that was, I did get a lot of publicity, but Werewolf was the one that put me on the map.
Andy Paley was telling me the story that he was in the living room, which for those of you who are
Providence?
familiar, was there was one on Com Ave.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Which is a bar that looked like a living room.
Yeah.
And he hears this couple next to him arguing, and he's just eavesdropping with his friends, and he just keeps hearing this. It's a rotary, John. It's a rotary. And he's like, "What the fuck is she saying?" And then they argue some more, and then he's like, "It's a rotary, John." And he goes like 2 days later, I realized, she's saying it's a rotary.
Yeah.
In the sense that their argument just keeps going around and around in a circle.
Yeah.
And it took him a full couple of days. It took me 26 year lives to remember and realize it was wrong that my mother hit us with a board.
Yeah, she should have done it with a spoon.
We had a wooden board that looked like a sword from The Hobbit.
Okay.
It had a handle and it was about that length.
Yeah.
And it was like a little sword. And my mother would use it to push clothes down into the washing machine.
Yeah.
And to hit us on the back of the legs and back.
To wash the blood off the clothes.
Exactly.
That she's drawn with the paddle.
Yeah. Now, to her credit, it was a different era.
Yeah.
She was in the Mad Men generation. And in fact, my dad is exactly Don Draper's age.
Yeah.
Like I know exactly how Don Draper progressed.
My aunt used to use Hot Wheels tracks on her kids.
Yeah, that's a bad one.
That's like the Jim Thompson oranges in the towel.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Northeastern
That's
moms.
exactly right.
Use the Hot Wheels tracks.
Yeah. She hit me so hard the purple connector tongue flew out.
Yeah.
And she would hit us with a board. And to her credit, she had 6 kids and my dad was no help.
Right.
In that regard. And so, cause he was never home. So she would hit us with the board and literally I'm now so that was that. I'm 26, 27 years old. And I remember this really clearly. I'm walking down the street. I'm in New York. I'm walking down the street and it just hits me. Holy shit, the board.
Yeah.
That was so fucked up.
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally.
And I called my brother Kevin. I was like, he goes, I just literally I ran to a payphone. I was like, Kevin, remember the board? He goes, yeah.
Yeah.
He goes, did I ever tell you what happened to the board? I went, no, but that was fucked up, right? He goes, oh yeah. Mom came at me with the board once when I was about 15 and I just took it out of her hands and said, did you want this? He goes, that was the end of the board.
Yeah. And my mother's side of the family, my grandfather looked exactly like in Ed Wood, who plays Bela Lugosi, is
Martin Landau?
Martin Landau, who doesn't seem like Bela Lugosi because he's kind of bigger.
Yeah, he's much bigger than Bela.
That was like my grandfather, was like his depiction of Bela Lugosi in that movie. He was a big, angry guy from Norway.
Right.
And I may have told you the story before, the Exorcist story with the VHS tape.
Oh, do tell.
So he would sit in the kitchen all day in the dark. He worked night shifts in a boiler room at Yeovil Hospital in Cambridge, which was like a 4-story, it was like Dante's Hell. It looked like Freddy Krueger's dungeon. Like that's what this hospital boiler room looked like. He would sit down there and read mystery novels and my mother would have him babysit me in this boiler room. It was horrific. And also Yeovil Hospital was a veterans hospital. So it was always, if you went upstairs, was like that scene in Jacob's Ladder with the vibrating heads and the people screaming.
Right.
So
underrated movie.
Totally underrated movie. And also has Kyle Gass and Jason Alexander and Louis Black are all in it.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, it was super weird. But so he would just sit in the kitchen at the table in the dark and smoke to the point where there was a smoke ring above where he sat.
Yeah.
And he would only watch Hawaii Five-0 and People's Court. That was the only things he did when he wasn't working. So my mother would have us just sit over there and she'd just bring a stack of movies and we'd watch them and not bother him. And that was babysitting. And she knew I loved horror movies, so she gets The Exorcist one day.
Not knowing.
I think she might have known. And I was
care.
probably 6, maybe 7. And my grandfather grew up like fairly religious. You know, he's an old guy from Europe. And the fuck me scene with the crucifix, he gets up, and he's a huge man.
Yeah.
Gets up, says nothing, walks pretty swiftly into the room, shoves his hand into the VCR. Doesn't press stop, doesn't press eject, shoves his hand into the VCR, tears the tape out, smashes it against the wall, saying nothing, like completely stone-faced, goes back into the kitchen and lights a cigarette and just sits back down, says nothing. And then he didn't talk to her for like 6 months. But he and my uncles, who were just like, there's 8 of them.
That is insane.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They would just get in these huge fights. And I remember they had this cop in our town who had grown up around the corner, and everyone called him Tabba because he kept tabs on everybody.
Oh, funny. Yeah, funny.
So he came over the house one day to get one of my uncles who had gone to a pig farm in our town, beaten up a cop, took his hat and badge, put it on the pig, and threw the pig through the window of the police station for fun. And they knew it was him.
Yeah.
So he comes over and he's like,
I'm just wondering if that was on his fridge.
Yeah. Bucket list.
Humiliate police officer.
Yeah.
Traumatized pig.
Yep.
Get plums.
Yeah.
Liquid plumber.
I like that he was method. He was accurate about it. He wasn't going to get like a costume hat and badge. He wanted a real one.
Replace stepladder.
Yeah. So he comes over and he's like, Mr. Tonneson, I got to talk to Ani. And I'm like, that's a pretty big crime. You know, like,
that's a big one.
I remember his name. My grandfather goes, get the fuck out of my house, Tabba. And he's like, okay, sorry, Mr. Tonneson. And then just like leaves. It was that kind of time. It was crazy. And it was just, I remember my uncle who's only,
when my friends and I in high school were busted for drinking beer in the woods, which was, that's how the social opportunities for teenagers in my hometown, especially before you had a driver's license, were limited to emulating your parents by getting drunk.
Yeah.
And which I never did.
But secretly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I never did it because I quite literally grew up in bars.
Yeah.
Because my dad was bartender at night. He was moonlight as bartender and on weekends. And on weekends, he'd go like, hey, guys, want to take a ride in the truck? And my brothers and I would get in the back of our green Chevy pickup, and then my dad would drive to the bar. And we would hang out at a bar all day. And then I just had no interest in it. It was literally, it would be as if everyone in my family peed the bed, I didn't pee the bed.
Yeah.
Just to be different.
But they were like, Dana, you have to go to the bathroom, get in bed. And you'd be like, I'm good.
I gotta piss.
Yeah.
I hope the bed's made. It'd be like 20 degrees.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? Let's go get some beers and go behind Johnny Cowan's house.
Yeah.
Get shit-faced.
Some fucking natty lights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would go and hang out with them
it's the only thing to
be
do.
social, but I didn't really, I would nurse one. And then one night we got busted by the police in our little small town, and we all were marched to the police station. It was that small. It was quite literally Mayberry. And the arresting officer called all of our parents, and their parents came and got us, but it happened to be my dad's hunting buddy. Of
course.
So he didn't bother calling my father. He just waited till all the other parents came and picked him up, and then he drove me home in the squad car. Yeah. And said, as I left, Gouldy, next time remember, cop cars have square headlights.
Get running.
You see this shit coming, screw.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was the end. And that was it.
It's good advice.
Yeah. And my mother goes, what was that all about? And I said, well, we were out drinking in the woods, but I wasn't drinking. And she said, well, don't tell your father that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, my dad would always be like, the kids are down in the park drinking. You can go down there. I don't mind.
Yeah. But no, my mother did quite literally say, like, don't tell your dad you weren't drinking.
Yeah.
Like, you would have been really disappointed.
Not in my house. Did you used to get, I remember.
It was like if I was in the platoon in Casualties of War. I heard a report that you didn't rape the girl. No, absolutely not, Dad. That's baloney.
It's a team sport.
There's the same sense of that you got from Famous Monsters. There's a comfort food element to it.
Yeah.
And that there's a positiveness to it. Even though you're like, look, Plan 9 is not a great movie, but I love it. And I'm full of great feeling when I see it.
Yeah. Because I don't know why you appreciate it, because someone's trying to realize, you know what it is? It's seeing something before you see it. Like science fiction
it's not cynical.
Yeah, science fiction is seeing, it's like Captain Beefheart has this song. he's talking about being an artist, and he says you have to see it before you see it. Well, how do you see something before you see it? Well, it's science fiction. It's like people are trying to evoke a world that doesn't exist, or fantasy is like that. And we need that, and we love it. And as far as MST goes, I don't think I really tried to design it. Like, there wasn't a style guide, like, we do these kind of jokes, we don't do these kind of jokes.
Right.
It was kind of like our wheelhouse. Like, it was me and the other people that made MST. If anything, what was going on at the time in the industry was there was this fascination because of cable to be really dirty. Like, you can now be dirty. This is liberty. This is what you wanted your whole life, is to say fuck on TV or something like that. Like somehow this is supposed to be this liberation that everyone wants and needs, is going to get us to this better place. and I kind of didn't believe it. I was sitting there going, no, it's, some people are great at it. Kinnison is great at it.
Yeah.
Let him do that. But there was this pressure, like, you got to get in there and do some real sick stuff. And it was like, it was a reaction to this kind of mentality that was like, you have to do this now. It's kind of, you have the freedom. Why wouldn't you do that? 'Cause this is cable.
Right.
And so my reaction was just kind of, well, number one, it's not who I am. It's not what I'm comfortable with, but I don't think that's where I want to go. And fortunately, the rest of the people that I was with did that too. I don't think we ever had to. I mean, basically the way we policed that whole, the tone of MST all came out of the room. And all I did was set up this rule, like, if you don't like a bit, just say it, and it's out. There's never any, when I was there's never any fights about like what goes in and what stays out.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It was never a thing. It was just like, the rule is, if I stop, it's not just me, it's anybody in the room could say, I don't like that joke. Like, once Trace said to me, I did a fat joke, and he just said, I don't think it's funny. And I go, no problem, it's out. We just threw it out, because the part of the nature of the show is each riff is kind of expendable. And there's so many of them that it's no big deal to throw one out and put one in. It's not like traditional, like, sitcom writing where it's all important and we have to go to a commercial and we have to go out on a big laugh. It's not like that. So I think I didn't really design that in. I didn't really say, when I'm writing whatever for the concept of Mystery Science Theater, that it's got to be friendly, or it's got to be warm towards the movies, or it has to have affection. Mm-hmm. That was just a happy kind of, it just was who we were.
Yeah. I mean, and I just think that the whole vibe of the show isn't shitty. There's just an overall,
and it's because there's puppets in it. We knew that kids were watching, and I don't really like those really cynical, like, dirty puppet shows, or like it's just kind of unfair. Like, even like really dirty cartoons, I just go, yeah, I know. I can appreciate what Ralph Bakshi was up to, but it wasn't like, oh, this is freeing my soul. This is now my heart is singing because I saw a cartoon lady's breast.
Yeah, I don't get,
and
like,
Fire and Ice.
A pornographic graphic novel like those Milo Manara things. Like, well, you can see the real thing. I don't understand.
Yeah. So that was a really ongoing thing, and we were kind of reacting to it. We were cynical that being crass or dirty or cynical is the ticket for Mystery Science Theater. I was skeptical of it. And
that's the thing about Batman Superman that I hated. It was so fucking cynical.
Yeah.
And, it's like, there's no joy in it.
Yeah. And I get that, though. Like, I get that that's this thing that people feel like it's kind of like, it's almost like Lenny Bruce really had a purpose. Right?
Yeah.
He really genuinely had a purpose in breaking down these societal norms that were inhibiting a lot of growth.
Right.
But does it do it now? Does doing the same thing? I guess it will always be that way, but but you feel like a lot of those fights have been won.
Yeah, and you do need
people are,
and there's a difference between taboos and boundaries.
Yeah,
you need boundaries. I mean, comedy, if you're just filthy all the time, it loses all meaning.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think too, it's about like when you become a parent, you you kind of get alert to that. Like basically with the new Mystery Science Theater, like the jokes that are adult jokes are veiled, and the only thing I said was, okay, if you bring up a joke that means a parent with a 10-year-old or an 8-year-old has to stop it and stop and explain to their kid what concept you're putting forward, it's over.
Right.
So that's basically to me what the problem is that if you're watching it as a family, it's PG-13. So if you're watching it as a family and we put forth an idea that a kid goes, well, what's that? You have to stop. You have to just stop what you're doing. Because if you're a parent, you don't want to gloss over stuff. If a kid asks a question, a responsible parent answers that question.
Right.
But it makes you uncomfortable. It takes you out of it. It makes it so you're suddenly nervous, and you don't want to watch it as a family. And I think somehow that served us with MST. Like, I meet all these people now that watched it with their parents, and that was this bonding thing where their parents felt comfortable watching it with them. And so, I meet these people who are like 30 and 35 now who watched it with their parents.
Right.
So it served it really well, but I think it was just we were thinking, oh yeah, it's a puppet show, so let's not make it. It's not a dirty puppet show. That's not what it's about.
No,
so,
yeah. And there's that same feeling of there's just a welcoming feeling to it that you get from Famous Monsters, that you get from that is that you're okay.
Yeah, I guess so. I didn't really, I have to say, a lot of this stuff is invisible to me, and so I didn't know.
And it's also put on in retrospect, but I think
that's right.
It didn't come, I think it's just it's the soul of the endeavor. Like, you didn't come from a shitty place.
Yeah, no, I don't know I don't exactly know. I guess musically, there's somebody that I really, that really helped me a lot was Jonathan Richman, Jonathan Richman and the Modern Lovers.
Yeah,
and
sure.
He was this guy who was supposedly in the punk movement, but he wasn't cynical at all. He was more like childlike, and he fit in. Like, he found this great way he kind of created this character that was really positive, but was all about putting forward music and ideas and a lot of challenging ideas too. But I found that really like supposedly he slept on Lou Reed's couch, which I think is unbelievable when you think about who Lou Reed was and who Jonathan Richman was. But I think he had something to do with that, because he found this really lovely way to do. Put forward, his stuff works for kids and adults and everybody in between. And so I think there was something about him too in there that kind of helped me understand you can do it. And of course, Paul Rubens and Pee Wee's Playhouse, which was also a really big influence.
Huge.
Yeah. Who found this, they just found this lovely tone. They found this way
and that's a great example. Yeah. And The Simpsons does it as well.
Yeah.
Where Paul, you'll watch Pee Wee's Playhouse, and there will be a joke that a parent will get that a 10-year-old won't get.
Right.
But a 10-year-old won't be aware that they're not getting something.
Right. And that's kind of, I think...
The Simpsons does that a lot.
That's I think that's a really elegant way to do those, because any real parent knows any issue they have to be available to tell their kids about. And you have to be willing to do that. That's the deal. And so... parents aren't afraid of talking about these issues with their kids. It's just that they don't want to stop watching a comedy show and have that conversation right in the middle of it.
Right.
So when you bring up that stuff, that's the law. That's the liability. It's not enhancing anything for families who want to watch a show. It's a detriment. And so I think a lot of people don't get that. I just think, I don't know. I think maybe I have a peculiar way of looking at it, but it's just, that's my my way of looking at it. You just want them to be at ease. It's just not going to happen unless everybody's having a good time and enjoying it. And the way to make your parents and kids stop enjoying it is by being dirty, because kids are super like, oh no, this is going to be an issue. Dad's got to talk to me now and say, oh, this is something you'll deal with later. Kids don't like it either.
No. For the new Mystery Science Theater, why now and not 10 years ago? And where can we see it?
Because now I can be really dirty. And I never could before.
And then you are now replaced by an animated Femlin.
Yes, beautiful Femlin, we call her. That's a puppet. It's going to be on Netflix in the new year. We still don't know when it comes out. It's at Netflix's pleasure at this point when they decide to release it. I hope it comes out early in the new year. What else? What was the other part of the question?
And why now? Why,
Oh my goodness. Well, why now is because we could finally get the rights to it. We got the rights, and I partnered with Shout Factory. We bought the rights to.
So you were in a John Fogerty, Saul Zaentz like.
Yeah, and Zaentz Can't Dance, which
but
is
steal your money.
pivotal song.
Yeah.
You're right about that, and it just was the time. It was just the time that we could get it. And then it just so happened that Kickstarter was at a really great place. We got Ivan Asquith, who's really brilliant and is the guy behind so many really big Kickstarter campaigns. Right. And so he's brilliant, and he really helped me kind of understand how that world works and how to work within that. And then, of course, we have a fantastic fan base that
showed up.
Nobody was sure was out there, but I suspected they were because we did like 5 years of touring with me and the original cast from MST doing a show called Cinematic Titanic.
Right.
So we met. I bet you I shook hands with 30,000 people, and I figured, well, there's probably 50,000 or more people out there that would pay like $80 to get all the series. So it was all back of the envelope kind of computation, figuring it out. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. To a new age of gods and monsters, Dana.
Can't even get into that joke today. Werewolf, again, like Ed Wood, it just, you and John Landis get together, you want to make the ultimate werewolf movie. You succeeded. It's, again, in addition, it's one of my all-time favorite movies. And you revolutionized, you revolutionized prosthetics away in that movie. And from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, you also told another guy what you were doing because he was doing another werewolf movie.
Yeah,
and then and then it became you were basically chasing yourself to get on screen first.
Yeah, well, what happened was, John had written, when I was doing Schlock, again, which was my second film, I was 20, and John was 21. John had already written American Werewolf, and he told me, he goes, this is going to be my next film, and he told me the whole story, and he said, to me, it just doesn't make sense that if your body is going through this tremendous change, if you're changing from a man into a wolf, that you would sit in the corner of a chair like Lon Chaney Jr. and be very still until you transformed, and then you would get up and in the case of the Wolfman, he's like in a wife beater, and then he has a shirt on after he changes.
Yeah, he changes
his clothes. Yeah, he's a very fashion conscious werewolf. Yeah, but. He said, I think he should move, and I want to show the pain. He says it should be really painful, and I want you to figure out a way how to do it. I went, that sounds so cool. And, how would you do it? And I go, I don't have a clue, but I want to do it. Because I love those films and the transformation scenes especially. And so I started thinking about it, and Schlock wasn't a big hit, and people weren't knocking down John's door to make the next film, and I had a long time to think about how to do this, and American Werewolf wasn't happening. And then I get a call from Joe Dante and Mike Fennell, and said, we're going to do a werewolf movie, and we'd like you to do the werewolf and do the transformation. And I go, well, a lot of ideas on how to do a really cool transformation. And the way things work, in this town so often, too, it's like as soon as I said yes and started working on the Howling, John Landis calls up and says, "Great news! I got money, we're going to do American Werewolf." And I went, "Oh, shit," and I go, "Well, there's a little bit of a problem, John." I go, "What's that?" "Well, I just took another werewolf movie." And he goes, "You fucker! You asshole!" I start, and I said, "But
I can absolutely hear
that." And I said, "But I'll figure out a way that I can make it work." So I talked to Joe and I said, "Listen, John's going to kill me. The ideas that I came up with, for his film were kind of what I was going to use in yours, but they should be in his film. And I have this protege that started with me when he was 13, who never did makeup, and he's a really very clever, talented kid. And
this is Rob Bottin.
Rob Bottin, and I said, I think that Rob would be great to do the film, and I could supervise and kind of consult." But let it kind of be Rob's film, just me as a consultant. And so we talked. I told him a lot of what I was planning on doing, and we kind of came to a balance about what he could use and what I could use, and the Howling actually was in production first, and. But
that's amazing.
Yeah, and it came out first, actually, and it was the first one where you actually had some change-o heads and stuff like that, and it was done on much less of a budget than we had. And
what's amazing about that, in the Howling, the transformation scene is done very, in terms of the cinematography, it's very traditional. It's a dark room, there's slanted lights. And in American Werewolf in London, the thing I remember when I saw it and when it came out. He's in a living room blasted with light, and you couldn't hide anything.
No, and I was worried about that, and I kept saying, "Can't we make it a little more horror film like?" And John just kept telling me to shut up and do what he told me, and he goes, "I'm the director." He goes, "This movie's supposed to be real, This is like, in a real movie, there's not horror movie light. I mean, a real life, there's not horror movie lighting. In my house there is, but
and the thing in that scene that you could not do today is in the middle of this horrible transformation, they cut to Mickey Mouse. You couldn't do that today. That was back before Disney realized they could sell people if they thought about mice. Sue people. Did I say sell people?
Yeah,
that was a bit of a Freudian slip, I think.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you one or two more questions, and then I want to get the people who may have questions for you. You picked Harry and the Hendersons for why of your incredibly deep filmography. Why Harry, and what are some of the other films that, if you could have programmed 5 films tonight, what are the films that you worked on that are near and dear to you?
Well, Werewolf, of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, the reason I picked Harry was because I'm really fond of Harry. I mean, the character himself.
Right.
And this was in the mid-'80s, and I think, when you watch the film today, I think you'll see that it's still holds up quite well, that's the amazing thing about
things about practical effects that are real. And I was lecturing somebody about this talking about Rob Bottin with The Thing. The Thing could have been shot yesterday. It looks the only thing that dates The Thing is the computer game. Everything else looks like and the original Planet of the Apes, because of could have been shot. Yeah, the only thing that dates that is the groovy hippie chimp at the end. But other than that, they're fairly timeless. And because your eye knows what it's seeing is real.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with, when during the 80s and into the 90s, makeup effects, we were kind of like the superstars of these kind of genre films, And then the computer stuff started happening, and we instantly became dinosaurs. And the computer guys were going, these guys are old school, they don't know what they're doing. We know, they were going to do some really cool stuff, And I was looking at it, and I was always intrigued by it. In fact, John Whitney Jr., who was a real pioneer in computer graphics, was
What's
a friend. John Whitney Jr.
John Whitney Jr.
He was a friend of John Landis's, actually. And during American Werewolf, when we were starting up, he at Universal in a screen room showed us a computer-generated scene that he did, which was like a table with a teapot on it and something that kind of resembles an orange and kind of resembles an apple. Not all that exciting, but it was still exciting that this was done on a computer, you know. And he said, I think that in the very near future, if you want to do a transformation, if you gave me the A side and the B side, I could do all the in-betweens on the computer. And he's talking about a morph, basically, you know. But it wasn't there at that time, you know. But then, you know, but I think now, like I said, if you look at Harry, done in the mid '80s, you look at computer stuff done even in the mid '90s, which is going to look more real. I mean, believe me. I mean, I enjoy the technology, and I love my computer, and I do a lot of designs and a lot of work on the computer, and I think it's a great tool, you know. But
yeah, it's one tool. It's one tool,
right?
There is a weird move back to practical effects. I know that they went out of their way, you know, and for my dollar, the best film of last summer, Mad Max, was famously, I think the only thing they did was wire removal and explosion enhancement, and everything else was practical. And apparently in the new Star Wars, they went out of their way to put in a lot of practical effects. I think because your eye doesn't lie. In the Benicio del Toro, The Wolfman, which was that you as well?
I did, yeah.
Which I actually think is a really underrated movie. I love that movie.
You know, it got panned.
He slaps a guy's head off. I'm in.
You know, I mean, it got panned by a lot of people, and even a lot of the horror fans didn't like it either.
I loved it. That was great.
But you know, I mean, I thought it was the closest thing to an old school horror movie that's been made in a long time.
I did too, and you know, a lot of my friends hated it, and I would always say like, what do you want to see in a movie called The Wolfman? Did this film not have? In that it contained a man and a wolfman. There is this great move back to pride. Hopefully, I think like everything else, there's it's analog and digital, and you know, there's a big vinyl resurgence now.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, I mean, you know, I keep hearing that. I don't see it as much as I had hoped. You know, and I mean, I always hoped it would calm down and we'd all get along and work together, you know, and because probably in the very early 90s when I got After Effects, which was a compositing software, one of the first things I did was composite my eyes on a puppet head. Because
we've all done that.
Yeah, well, you know, but I did it in the 90s, you know, but I just thought, why aren't people doing this? You know, I mean, and just this same thing, I mean, to be able to have another way to, you know, another tool in your, you know, toolkit.
Yeah, well, I remember like reading on another, like when the Who got lasers, and they said we can go on tour with lasers, and that way you know, it was just like everything takes a step, and then everybody has them, and then it's all about lasers. Does anyone in the audience have something they'd like to ask Mr. Baker before we move on? The gentleman in the hat. Gale us with a Gremlins 2 tale. Any battle stories about Gremlins 2?
Okay. Well, we made a lot of stuff for that movie. And again, this was kind of in the golden age of makeup effects and that kind of stuff, because we actually had time. My daughter, Veronica, who's sitting in the back there, was actually conceived of and born on that movie during the time I was working on it. And there's actually...
So it wasn't all work. Come on, you can't lob them over the plate like that. I'm going to swing at a mush ball.
There's a shot in the movie where Gizmo's preparing he's being like Rambo, and you know they're panning over to the clock that's going to say it's midnight, and I said to Joe, wait, and I had a picture of Veronica with me. And I go, let's put this in a frame and put it right next to the clock there. So if you watch that movie, when they pan over, there's a picture of a little girl with a hat on. My wife Sylvia always put hats on. I turned the film down a number of times. They asked me to do it. And I think the reason they actually even came to me because Chris Walas wasn't available, who did the original Gremlins. I just said I wasn't that interested because I didn't really want to duplicate something that had already been done. I like the design process and developing the characters. And Joe and Mike both said, what can we do to talk you into it? And I said, let me redesign them a little bit and let me make them individual characters. And I think it'd be cool to do, because I know Joe's a Warner Brothers cartoon fan, Chuck Jones.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
And I said, I love Chuck Jones cartoons as well, and let's do kind of a Daffy one, and like a George and Lenny, like they always said, tell me about the rabbits, George.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and
you can't get far away from Lon Chaney Jr.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that's great about Joe. He's open to that, and on the spot, on the day, it was like, hey, let's do this, And I had a friend back in the Clokey days when I was a kid working at Stop Motion Place. One of these guys that I met all of these like-minded people, all these kids that read Famous Monsters and made amateur films and stuff. This guy named Mark McGee actually had an amateur film where he had a beaker that said "acid, do not throw on face," and then he threw on the face. So I stole that idea when we were doing that, and I said, let's do acid, do not throw on face, and then we have him put a Phantom of the Opera mask on,
And now, a tale well calculated to keep you in
His name was Cotton Mather. As if that wasn't bad enough, his father's name was Increase Mather. Cotton Mather was born in Boston, Massachusetts in 1663 and became one of the most well-known Puritan ministers in the 1600s. Mather, who entered Harvard at the age of 11, yet oddly enough did not become a Simpsons writer, and preached his first sermon at 16, Mather wrote over 400 books and pamphlets. In 1689, he published Memorable Providences, which told the story of the Goodwin family of Boston, Massachusetts. John Goodwin was a stonelayer, a hard-working, devout family man. In 1688, 4 of his children began behaving in a most peculiar manner. As Mather wrote, they would bark at each other like so many dogs, then purr like so many cats, and then, not good for them, quote, nothing in the world would so discompose them as a religious exercise. Mather was so perplexed by Goodwin's children that he took one of them home with him, Martha. Martha did not behave herself when a guest in the Mather household. She not only pranced about his home like a pony and whistled through family prayer service, she mocked old Cotton Mather directly, rereading his notes on her own case out loud and mocking him as she did so. But remember, this is not a modern story. This is Puritan New England in the 1600s, a dark, cold, superstitious, spooky-ass place, Massachusetts in the 1600s. Deep, dark, impenetrable woods, no electricity, sparsely populated by religious zealots. The Puritans, as they so called themselves, came to and settled this rocky, hard-to-farm, God-forsaken land so they could worship freely. Their initial goal being to purge the Church of England of its more Catholic practices. Think about that. Catholicism wasn't tight-assed enough for these people. New England was a mighty inhospitable place. The land was brutal and difficult. The weather was mean, freezing cold in the winter, sweltering, muggy hot in the summer. And the traffic to the Cape, forget it. The local Native American tribes were not very enamored of their Bible-loving, pale-faced interlopers and frequently committed, let's call them atrocities, to make their unhappiness known. In 1676, King Philip's War wiped out a full third of New England's towns and claimed a full 10% of the adult male population. So, the Puritans were incredibly religious, incredibly superstitious, and under a lot of goddamn pressure. In 1641, the colonists established their legal code. The first capital crime was idolatry. The second was witchcraft. Murder was fourth, after blasphemy, with bestiality bringing up the rear. No pun intended. But Cotton Mather soon got to the root of the problem that was affecting John Goodwin's family. It was not his children. It was the mother of the neighborhood laundress. As it turns out, the mother of Goodwin's laundress was a witch, and, thus suspected, was brought to court, placed on the stand, and challenged to recite the Lord's Prayer, which she could not do with 100% accuracy. And that, if you did not know, was all the proof you needed at that time to divine as to whether or not someone was a witch. And with that, John Goodwin's laundress's mother was hanged on Boston Common in November of 1688. Mather's account of the Goodwin family's travails was told in his book Memorable Providences, which was widely read, though probably not at night, as there was no electricity. Flash forward 3 years to 1692, to nearby Salem, Massachusetts. 9-year-old Elizabeth Parris begins behaving much like Martha Goodwin did 3 years before. This is very bad news for Elizabeth's father, Samuel Parris. For Samuel Parris was a minister and very familiar with Cotton Mather's book. Soon other girls in Salem began behaving just like Elizabeth. 12-year-old Abigail Williams got the heebie-jeebies, followed by Ann Putnam Jr. A doctor was brought in to examine the girls and found evidence that, quote, the evil hand, quote, had befallen them. By May, a total of 8 young women in Salem claimed to have fallen under the spell of a witch. One of them, the ironically named Dorothy Good, was all of 4 years old. In many cases, these terrified children started spouting off the names of the adults who had afflicted them with witchcraft, many of whom they had never met. But that did not matter. In their time of need, the eyes of Salem looked for guidance, and they turned to that blowhard Cotton Mathers. Cotton Mathers advised exquisite caution, and then added, but nevertheless, a speedy and vigorous prosecution. Gee, thanks. Some things really never do change. In Salem and nearby Salem Village, now known as Danvers, hysteria mounted and accusations grew. 72-year-old Ann Foster was interrogated. According to her neighbor, Foster had bewitched several local children and a hog. Soon, Mary Lacey, who was Foster's daughter, was arrested. And then Mary Lacey's daughter, Mary Lacey Jr., was brought in. Now, Ann Foster denied being a witch. The magistrates asked her daughter, Mary Lacey, if she knew that her mother had bewitched her. She did not, and asked them, why did her mother bewitch her? And by doing so, basically agreed with the justices that her mother was indeed a witch. By the time poor Mary Lacey Jr., Ann Foster's granddaughter, was questioned, the magistrate simply asked her if she acknowledged she was a witch, and she, confused and terrified, simply said yes. Now, Ann Foster, Mary Lacey, and Mary Lacey Jr. were all brought before the court. 3 generations of witches. Salem became a bee's nest of accusations and cross-accusations. A young woman named Mary Warren alleged that Ann Putnam had bewitched her, then admitted to lying, then was accused of witchcraft herself, then reversed her original statement, took back her lie, and reaffirmed that, yep, it was Ann Putnam, she's the witch. By this time, Salem was a hoppin', and people were coming from all around to watch the trials, much to the delight of limelight-gulping Cotton Mather, who, in his typical way, begged for compassion for the accused, but more compassion for the judges of the accused, for they were going up against the devil himself. So much for the supposed innocence of the accused. 5 witches, all vehemently protesting their innocence, and, of course, they were, and that's the beauty of accusing someone of being a witch, or a communist, or a terrorist. The more they protest their innocence, the more it looks like they're guilty. Well, of course they say they aren't witches. What else would a witch say? Anyway, they were all executed by the state. Then the hysteria, and then the flood. Nehemiah Abbott Jr., Sarah Wilds, William and Deliverance Hobbs, Edward and Sarah Bishop, Mary Black and Mary English, all suspected of witchcraft. Deliverance Hobbs gave the most colorful explanation of their pathetic plight. A black demon who lived deep in the New England woods. He supposedly killed a young girl by literally tearing her to pieces. He killed several other women, if not as elaborately. In addition to being in league with Satan, according to the frightened girl's testimony, he was also in league with the Indians and the French, as he had killed several frontier soldiers as well. Who was this embodiment of evil? According to the young girl's testimony, it was none other than George Burroughs, a local minister of all things. Of course, by the time Burroughs was brought in, there was literally no room in the jail for him, it being so very full of witches. In addition to being a minister, Burroughs was also a veteran Boston militia captain who was well loved and supported by his troops. But no matter. In fact, during a raid in 1689, he survived a brutal 7-hour battle. What may seem heroic to some was now used as evidence of being a witch. Who else could have survived a battle like that? On the stand, his young accusers buried Burroughs. They claimed he bit them and then showed their wounds. Yep, human teeth marks, just like Burroughs. Who else could have made them? The girls claimed to have been throttled by ghosts. The judge asked Burroughs who, if not him, was ordering these ghosts to throttle these girls. Burroughs replied, "It may be the devil." The judge then asked Burroughs, "If you're so horrible, why is the devil framing you?" Ha ha! Good one! Burroughs was a widower 2 times over. Both of his wives had passed away of natural causes. Again, it was the 1600s. On the stand, one of Burroughs' former brothers-in-law attested to the fact that once he, Burroughs, and some other friends went berry picking. Burroughs wandered off alone, and the rest of the party couldn't find him. When they returned home, they discovered that Burroughs had beaten them back to the house, and that he already had a full basket of berries. According to the judge, the explanation was simple. The devil had furnished Burroughs with an invisibility cloak. How else could he have gotten home before them without them seeing him? Also, apparently, the devil will help you pick berries. During the trial, one girl said she had just seen the blood-red face of one of Burroughs' deceased wives. According to the girl, the ghostly apparition demanded justice. The court posed the question, not whether or not what this girl saw was true, but why Burroughs' deceased wife would want justice. I thought you said she died of natural causes. Out of arguments, poor beleaguered George Burroughs, again, I remind you, a minister, produced a slip of paper from his pocket and read aloud. There neither are, nor ever were there witches, that, having made a compact with the devil, can send the devil to torment other people at a distance. It was, quite frankly, the worst thing he could have possibly said. For if there were no such things as witches, then the Commonwealth of Massachusetts just executed 5 innocent people, 6 if you go back to John Goodwin's laundress's mother. Burroughs was reading from the book of Thomas Adie. Adie was sort of the Amazing Randy of the 17th century, and Adie attributed most supernatural occurrences to drinking, paranoia, or even the odd blow to the head. The problem was, Burroughs had already testified that there were witches, just that he wasn't one of them. And contradicting himself on the stand didn't help his case at all. On August 19th, 1692, Cotton Mather made the journey to Salem to watch George Burroughs and 3 others as they were marched through a large crowd to the waiting gallows. Burroughs was the first one up the ladder. There he loudly and clearly proclaimed his innocence, and as the noose was fastened around his neck, did something that shocked the crowd. He recited the Lord's Prayer perfectly. Now, if you recall, an inability to recite the Lord's Prayer was supposedly foolproof evidence that you were a witch. Remember John Goodwin's laundress's mother? Cotton Mather's to the rescue. Remember, George Burroughs was a minister, but he was not an ordained minister. And golly, how clever was the devil that he would send a minister as an agent of evil. What a crafty Dickens! And so, George Burroughs was hanged. But after the death of George Burroughs, the Massachusetts Bay Colony experienced something of a guilt-ridden hangover. Remember how mainstream America recoiled from the excesses of the McCarthy era? Remember how, after the Iraq War, most of America kind of recoiled and went, let's not think about that. I think it might have been the wrong country. I imagine in a couple of months or maybe a year, some very dedicated Trump followers may have the same experience. Cotton Mather wrote a book explaining why people should feel not guilty, but awesome over the state-sanctioned murder of George Burroughs. But in the shocked aftermath, it didn't really sit well. And Cotton Mather became something of an unspoken pariah. He became quietly enraged when his supporters became somewhat less enthusiastic in their ardor. His father himself didn't give him a quote for his book. In October of 1692, Massachusetts Governor George Phipps disbanded the witch court. In the ensuing months, Mathers would treat several other girls for signs of witchcraft, but none were imprisoned, much less executed. To this day, the town of Salem, Massachusetts is famous for one thing: the hysteria resulting in the state-sponsored execution of nearly 24 innocent individuals charged with the crime of witchcraft. That, and there is a liquor store there called the Bunghole. The most famous retelling of this tale was Arthur Miller's play The Crucible, used as it was to criticize the anti-communist hysterica that was sweeping the nation at the time. So much so that it was called a witch hunt. Now, all of the information for this piece was taken from the excellent book The Witches by Stacy Schiff, S-C-H-I-F-F. If you have even a passing interest in this subject, I highly, highly, highly recommend Ms. Schiff's book. And the best way to get it is to go to DanaGould.com. You clicky-clack your keyboard to DanaGould.com, clicky-clack on our Amazon banner, and shop away. You get what you want, and for no extra charge, we get a couple extra beans to keep the lights on around here. Also on the homepage of DanaGould.com, you'll see options to donate to the show or subscribe through PayPal. Every cent goes back into the show, and please know we appreciate what, if anything, you can do. But that's not all. You can visit our store at ComedyFilmNerds.com for Bevilacqua Heating and Air Conditioning t-shirts, Dana Gould Hour t-shirts, signed vinyl copies of Funhouse and Let Me Put My Thoughts in You, The vinyl release of I Know What's Wrong is finally in production and on its way. Signed CDs, signed DVDs, Dana Gould Hour posters, T-shirts, canned hams, all signed by me, and just in time for Thanksgiving. Huh? All at store.comedyfilmnerds.com. Woo! After pimping out all of that bullshit, I'm tired. I feel like I might need to go lay down. Casper is an online retailer of premium mattresses for a fraction of the average price. Casper is revolutionizing the mattress industry by cutting the cost of dealing with resellers and showrooms and passing that savings directly on to the consumer. Casper is an obsessively engineered mattress at a shockingly fair price. Mattresses can often cost well over $1,500, but Casper mattresses cost just $500 for a twin-size mattress and $950 for a king-size mattress. Mattresses that combine springy latex and supportive memory foam to create an award-winning sleep surface with just the right sink and just the right bounce. And all Casper mattresses are made right here in Murka. Time magazine named it one of the best inventions of 2015. An award-winning mattress that won't disappoint. Try Casper for 100 nights risk-free in your own home. If you don't love it, they'll pick it up and refund you everything. Free shipping and returns to the U.S. and Canada. Get $50 towards any mattress purchase by visiting casper.com/Dana and using the promo code Dana. And remember, if you ever meet Dana, please don't /Dana.
Here in person tonight, White Horse Drive-In Theater, The Trial of the Dead. 18 living nightmares leap from the stage. All lights go out, and the monsters are released from their coffins. They may grab you. Victims from the audience will be thrown from the stage a piece at a time. Human heads chopped off. Jungle worms and swamp rats run around your feet. Extra on stage, back from the grave. The spirit materialization of Bruce Lee, King of Kung Fu. It's real. On stage, not a movie. You may need help. Help! Help! Tonight, White Horse Drive-In Theater.
And now a word from the people who pay the bills.
You see, way back in the 1600s, Willard's Mill had a constable named Thaddeus Eccles. You know the witch trials down in Salem, right? You know how many witches they burned down there? 20. You know how many witches Thaddeus Eccles burned in Willard's Mill? 172.
One person burned 172 people for witchcraft?
One sheriff. And ever since, every sheriff we've ever had has died an early, violent, horrible death.
Okay, so I'm as good as dead, and I shouldn't enter the pie contest?
Stand against evil, November 2nd on IFC.
I used to always have this real sense of rage when kids would as they got into teenage years, which now I realize as an adult is that what they do as teenagers, but they would kind of ruin Halloween by making it about like mayhem and drinking. And it was like probably like 14, 15, 16. They would kind of get in there. And it wasn't even just being
And you're
old.
railing against people that don't emulate the Universal classics and they're you know,
I'm like, the movie
Dracula
Loft
did
has
not
a marathon.
have exposed fangs.
Yeah. That is an inaccurate costume. Or I just would hate,
you can't have Peter Cushing Van Helsing with a Bela Lugosi Dracula. This conversation is over.
That would, just the clearance of rights alone you would be a corpse by the time you completed that paperwork.
No, be Frankenstein without neck bolts. It's the best costume ever. I cannot fucking believe you are so stupid.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you the captain of the football team with a head injury or the monster from hell? I can't tell.
The monster from hell really did look like George the Animal Steel going to a party as Frankenstein.
Yeah. Costume.
Do my toes.
Yeah. I always love people whose costume go-to is less clothes. There's like certain
that
people,
is it now, or just like I have a special affinity in my heart for like there are two. The world is divided into two kinds of people, and this is it.
Yep.
People who start planning their Halloween costume on October 1st, and people who wait till 5:30 on the 31st and just say "fuck it, hobo."
Yeah. We got any boxes? Or girls would always go, "I'm a baby. I put my hair in pigtails and I'm wearing pajamas," but I'm like, I've never seen a baby with pigtails.
Now you have to be slutty baby.
Yeah, slutty baby. I'm a baby with a baby. We had one store, and again,
slutty baby.
Slutty baby, that fine song from the 1940s, that under the counter 45.
For sure. I don't know, and I do not know when this happened, that everything for Halloween now is just slutty blank.
Yeah.
Slutty
There's
Albert.
a sexy Freddy Krueger costume. He's a burned child molester.
Yeah.
They've done a sexy costume of a burn victim child. Like, that is the ultimate. You're not going to get a more inappropriate sexy costume.
In his defense, he is the bastard son of 1,000 maniacs.
He is true, which he got that way from being so sexy.
Yeah, exactly.
What was he wearing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
According to Dell, what do you expect being around 1,000 maniacs?
You seen that Christmas sweater? Red. It's like they're like bulls with those red stripes.
I was looking up a photo of Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz for something. I was emailing somebody about something, and I just said Dorothy Oz.
Yeah.
Google image to get the thing to send it. I was making some sort of Judy Garland amphetamine joke.
Yeah.
And it went right up to immediately the slutty Dorothy costume.
Of course.
Yeah. But it didn't even, like, Judy Garland was like way down the page.
Oh, yeah.
Right to slutty Dorothy.
That's the world we live in. And I think people...
Slutty Cabbage Patch.
Slutty Cabbage Patch. It would be a kimchi patch. It's fermented cabbage.
Yes.
Kimchi
I'm a
kits
big
would be
fan
good.
of F-Trope. Do you have any slutty Ken Berry costumes?
We just have Ken Berry.
Yeah,
he's a huge slut.
We have Ken here, and we have slutty Forrest Tucker.
Ken Berry and cutoffs.
Ken Berry and Daisy Dukes.
Hey, y'all. We didn't have Halloween stores like you have now. Even the pop-up ones.
But there was no such thing.
No, you would either go to, first of all, I think the pop-up stores are great because it's basically a store possessing the corpse of a dead store.
That's really,
which is so
really
appropriate.
Brilliant. Yeah.
It's like an exorcism.
That's really
it's always
funny.
a store, like Woolworths has now been resurrected as demonic clothes.
Well, and I don't mind, just as a sidebar, I don't mind the CVS decorating for Halloween in August.
Yeah.
I wish they'd wait till after Labor Day.
Yeah.
But before, fine.
They got to make their money. It's fine.
Right. But don't break down Halloween and start Christmas on October 21st.
Yeah.
Just see it through.
Dad giving up, like, we've sold everything we're going to sell.
Yeah.
Put it on clearance October 25th.
Yeah.
But they...
Just the only thing we have, everything is gone except for the Johnny Depp Tonto costume. And that thing is not moved a unit.
And a red leather cap with horns and a tail. I don't even know why we ordered that.
I don't care what the movie is. I want to wear a bird.
Yes.
Fine,
Yeah.
Johnny. We'll write a script.
Yep. Can it be alive? I don't know if we can do that. But you would have to either go to a drugstore. That would be the only place where you could get costumes, very limited amount. Or there were like a very small handful of costume shops that were like all your theatrical costume shops that were like mythical. And I remember there was one in Waltham, Mass, near Mr. Big's Toyland. And we had one in North Reading, which is still there. It was called Joker's Wild.
Match.
And we would go there and they would
Delicious.
have, it was fantastic. And they would have like Don Post masks.
Oh, good.
And stuff you would only see in magazines. And it was sort of magical to be able to go there once a year. Around September, we'd go and you could we'd spend the whole day
And this
there.
wasn't a store dedicated to the preservation of the memory of Joey Lewis.
It was Joey Lewis, and they had his. I don't think it was his actual corpse.
His
but
cheek
it was
flaps.
Yeah. But they had all.
And if you don't know what I mean, just look it up.
Just Google it. But they had everything. I mean, they had like a section that was like, here's a whole wall of witch pieces and a whole wall of demons everything. And it was what people sort of take for granted now. And it was a very old style costume shop. The people who ran it were really into it. Mm-hmm. And you could buy makeup appliances, and they had Tom Savini makeup books. And so it was like going to Disney World for us every year in September.
Right.
And we would go there, and it was, my parents didn't have a lot of money, but they would let me splurge at Joker's Wild. So I could get a good costume there every year.
That's nice.
And it was completely lost on everybody who just didn't give a shit. Like they would just get like whatever costume. And I missed that that sort of, and they're still there, and they don't even have a lot of the sexy costumes and stuff like that, which is pretty entertaining.
Right.
But whenever I see like adult costume parties and it's like, or when they do that news story that's like hottest costume this year, and it's like the most offensive possible thing, like a roast battle style mentality for costumes. Yeah. It just kills me. It just kills me. Like something about, I'm like, no, you need to go to a shop and get build yourself a costume from the pieces they have.
But I'm also a coward about it because I really go for comfort. Like, do you dress up on Halloween?
I don't. That's the weirdest thing. If I do, I'll just be like, I'll like Gomez Adams it. I'm like, sure. I'm kind of an eccentric weird guy.
I have a skeleton jumpsuit.
Yep.
I put on over my jeans and my t-shirt. And happy.
You go beat up Ralph Macchio.
But I'm because I'm out with the kids. I want to be comfortable. And then we're going to go to a Halloween party. And Pam goes, let's go as Tippi Hedren and Alfred Hitchcock from The Birds. I'll get that. And you can be Alfred Hitchcock. I'm like, what am I going to be, a fat guy?
Yeah.
I spent an entire night in a fat suit and a bald cap on.
She's like,
you're just going to be in a beautiful
fat suit.
You're just going to be in a beautiful Edith Head couture suit.
I want to look like a beautiful 60s woman with a bird on me.
Exactly.
That was Johnny Depp's original request. But then they were like, we're going to take the couture outfit away and just keep the bird. He's like, cool.
Why do I got to be in a fat suit? I just lost 20 pounds.
Because you'll feel so good when you take it off at night.
I haven't had bread in 2 months. Can I be, what if I was Alfred Hitchcock's corpse?
Yeah. Yeah. Very thin.
With Mystery Science Theater, a lot of people don't realize the first incarnation was at Mystery Science Theater 2000, because it did start as
it was always 3000. It was always 3000
before it was at the Comedy Channel.
Well, before that, it was a local show.
That's what I was getting to, and that's I met you just before.
It was right around that time. It was right around that time because I was trying to grow my hair out.
Right. And it was back when Husker Du had a rehearsal space near you.
Oh, no, that was the Replacements. Right. The Replacements. But we went, one of my happiest, one of the memories I'm so proud of. And I had forgotten about this, but like somebody posted it on my Twitter feed or something. He goes, I remember you and Dana Gould playing air guitar during a Husker Du concert. And it was like...
And bumming out everybody.
I was so proud of it because we were trying to upstage Husker Du at First Avenue by being idiots. And it was like, I was so proud of it.
I still remember what you said. And this is a physical thing that no one's going to get, but... Imagine a regular air guitar, and then you go, the girls aren't looking, make your guitar bigger. And then you outstretch your arms as far as
we were playing really huge air guitars.
Yeah, but
and
Grant Hart was dying.
We were trying, seriously, we were trying. I just love the picture because we were actually thought we could upstage them. We're not lit, we're on the dance floor. And we were trying to upstage Husker Du. So I was
idiots.
I'm honest to God, it's one of my happiest memories. I really would have, I think it would have gone away unless someone mentioned it. And then I called Dana and go, do you remember this? And you said, yeah.
I remember really. I just saw Bob Mould works a lot with Fred Armisen.
Oh my God. That's right.
Podcast,
that's right.
And we were just
so great.
We were up at that thing in San Francisco. Outside Lands.
Yeah.
And I get I was talking to, it's very strange. Like you get to meet people that Bob Mould to me is like a giant rock star. It's like,
I know he's really hanging out. Really special. And, I think local bands have a lot to do too with that kind of pride, where it's the same thing with local TV. And it's like, that's your start to kind of feel like maybe you could do something like,
yeah, totally.
Wait a minute. The Replacements have like a record that's like, tearing up the charts. It's like it's happening, and they're from our town.
Yeah, and so it's very DIY, and I think that
it really punctures the illusion that you can't do it. You kind of grow up with this veil of like Hollywood saying we're like God's point of view, pretty much, and you can't really get involved with this. That's kind of the veneer I think that's on it when you're a kid. And then you start to see these the seams, you know?
Yeah,
and
totally.
so
yeah,
you
totally,
can start to go, well, maybe if you want to, if you're wired that way, you can start to go, I could maybe get involved. And having bands like Husker Du and the Replacements and that are kind of like starting to penetrate, you go, oh yeah, right. That's good. That's a really good thing.
And you see it now in the different levels, especially on television, which is now so much more interesting than movies.
Yeah.
That's really changed in the past 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
You know,
I know. It's weird.
Television used to be garbage and movies were art. And now movies are just product. And this all the interesting shit to me is on television.
It's weird, but TV has become kind of a deeper experience.
It has, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, as I was talking to somebody was like, if Iron Man is not in your movie, it's really hard to get it made.
That's great.
And it's just like,
true.
And somebody described it, it's like, there's Divergent or something, or whatever I went to see with my kids. It's just like, well, that's not a movie. That's just movie product.
Right.
You know,
right.
It's like, yes, that's successful movie product. People might not know, like, you had an amazing career as I guess you'd say a stand-up. I mean, it was a hybrid. Yeah, your act was a hybrid.
Yeah, I don't know what you call it, but I was like, I fit in that slot. Fortunately, I could do clubs, and so fortunately,
because you love the road,
and the clubs were all set up. We're quickly getting set up, like right when I was starting to do stand-up.
Right.
Like cable just broke, and suddenly they were realizing comics were this perfect. It was like this perfect match, putting comics who are always rolling over new material. They could be this, kind of a commodity in cable, and that was happening right when we were kind of starting.
You grew up in a little town called Vaudeville, USA. If
that's
I'm not
right.
mistaken.
All singing, all dancing.
Yeah, you don't put on your
USA.
pants. Don't put on your pants till you're about to.
So
go
let
on
me
stage.
see. No, I started doing stand up my senior year of college. So that was like about 1981.
Yeah.
I went out to LA in 1982. And right then I got on like Letterman right away, within a couple of months.
You were on Letterman and Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, I was doing them
right away.
Yeah, it was like right after each other, and it kind of burnt me out, but it was really all I wanted to do. I really wanted to get on Letterman, and SNL was a complete surprise because I didn't think I'd ever be on that show because I didn't do improv. So that was at a time when.
That was back in the early 1980s when SNL really lost its way. Lorne Michaels had left. The original cast had left. And it was really at that point where now it's a cultural landmark. It's Mount Rushmore now. Back then, people really weren't sure if it was going to stay on the air.
Yeah, and they started booking variety acts. So they'd have Harry Anderson,
Michael Davis,
Penn and Teller, Michael Davis, and me.
Yeah.
And they just
which was great.
In.
And I wish they would do that again.
Well, it was really interesting. I had Joe Piscopo came up to me and said something surprisingly lucid.
Wow!
While we were doing the show,
was it about your guns?
No, he says, "You're looking good, man. What's your max?" No, he didn't say that. He just said, "Wow, you're so lucky. You get to do your own stuff." He goes, "I have to go out and do this whether it's funny or not." And it was really amazing and really it was just like a dose of reality about his life at that time.
Yeah. No, I think he was not crazy for a period of time.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
What's interesting is that you were like, you had everything going and then you just kind of walked away from it.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But before that,
yeah.
Did you ever, I'm just curious, did you ever in your travels empty out a hotel in New York?
Oh, right. Yeah. I have to tell that story. So this is the very first SNL I did. And, it all kind of hinged, I think, on the Young Comedian special, which I think I got first, which
was a huge thing,
which was another like amazing something I never imagined I'd get to do, but I really wanted to because that's where I first saw Seinfeld and first saw Pee Wee Herman, and you just go, it was this amazing show on HBO because you'd see who was coming. They'd really pick out these great new acts. It was great.
When the comedy boom of the 80s started, there was this comedians that really broke, and I think it was all tied to the sort of weird cartoonish pop cultural landscape of the time, all had characters that were heightened, that weren't just, it was a reaction to the George Carlin, I'm going to come up on stage wearing what I wore out that afternoon and be real, be Donald Fagen real.
And Steve Martin.
And then Steve Martin was the first person to go against that. And then it seems to me that what happened in the earlies was Steve Martin made into mass consumption.
He really was like the Beatles
of
comedy.
Absolutely was. There's no
It was like I saw him my freshman year of college in Minneapolis.
People never understand how big he was.
Yeah, I saw him at the St. Paul Civic Center in front of 20,000 people in a hockey arena.
Mm-hmm. Best place to see stand-up.
Yeah, well, that's what really shocked me was I'm sitting there going...
he just did table magic.
It's really true. It's really true. Like, I was sitting there going, what's he going to do? Like, it's a stadium.
Yeah.
What's he going to... Well, nothing. He's going to do what he does on The Tonight Show. He's going to do the what he's famous for. It didn't matter. Everybody was thrilled, and he's obviously really special in the whole thing. And Andy Kaufman... And then you have Pee Wee Herman, but then all these great stand-ups.
And in the early 80s, that was like Stephen Wright, Bobcat, Emo Phillips, Judy Tenuta, Paul Rubens, Pee Wee Herman, yourself. That's what, the comedy became...
There's almost like two schools,
Yeah,
there was
totally.
like
Absolutely
monologists and then these other more conceptual...
I can only liken it to popular music. You had, the 70s bands that were still playing. And then you had the 80s sort of new wave bands.
Yeah.
And the 80s new wave bands also had like a heightened identity, Elvis Costello and all that.
Talking Heads, yeah.
It's a marketing niche. It's like, and the way that now people look at alternative comedy, like what is alternative comedy? It's just a way to say like, if you like this kind of music, you'll like this kind of comedy.
Yeah, he was asking how I kept my determination and my focus and stuff. I mean, I've just led such a blessed life, and it started with my parents, who were the most amazing people in the world. My parents didn't have money. My mom was a bank teller most of her life, and my dad had a new job every other week, basically. But what. They were very loving. I always knew that I'm an only child. My mom had a bad heart, and they said, she shouldn't really have children because she may die, or the child might die, or even worse, the child might grow up and become a makeup artist.
Basically,
But I always knew I was wanted and loved, And my parents liked horror movies. My
did or did not?
Did.
Yeah. My mother introduced me to all the Universal classics. So
we'd go to the drive-in. I'd have my pajamas on, in the back, and we'd go see movies in the drive-in, and I'd usually fall asleep partway through it. But and my dad would tell me about films I hadn't seen. Frankenstein, first of all, I hadn't seen when I was young, and then the Frederick March, Jekyll and Hyde, and he talked about how he saw it when he was a kid, and he had to hide his eyes and things, and couldn't wait to see these films, But I used to think that I wanted to be a doctor when I was really little, but it turns out I really wanted to be Dr. Frankenstein. Right. I wanted to have a laboratory with all the Kenneth Strickfaden equipment and stuff,
But there is an element of it. You say you're a teenage kid and you're making masks, but there's a lot of chemistry involved in that. I mean, did you?
I was actually 10 when I changed, but I did career choice. I mean, I was, like I said, it wasn't until I was 10 that I realized that doctors don't really make monsters. It's makeup artists.
Yeah.
And I found this out.
now.
Well, not on purpose anyways, but I mean, I found
before
out.
Before collagen and Botox.
Yeah. Through famous monsters of filmland, that people make a living. Jack Pierce, and I went to my parents. They were very excited about the fact that I was always very kind of. Once I headed down a path, I was very focused on that,
right.
Which is weird because my mind goes all over the place when I do things, but I can somehow, when I'm working on something like that, focus. But they were so excited that I was going to go to college and become a doctor, and then then I thought, okay, I'm going to.
Ka-ching.
I got to talk to my parents and tell them about my change of careers, So I went to my mother and said, you know how I always talk about how I want to be a doctor. Oh yes, Ricky, we're so proud. loud, and I go, well, I kind of changed my mind, and they, and they said, well, you can do anything you want to do. And I said, well, she said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to be a monster maker. And she goes, I don't think that's a real job, and I go, no, there is. I'm Jack Pierce, Universal. He made Frankenstein, he made the Wolfman, he made, Mummy, and instead of just like slapping me and sending me to my room and stuff, she said, well, you can do anything that you set your mind to, and as long as you work hard, I'm sure you can make it happen. And I believed her, and she was right.
That's amazing.
And again, I wasn't born into the film industry, and Covina wasn't like the film capital of the world.
You could be anywhere. Yeah.
So I just was very determined that this is what I wanted to do, and it was very different than it is now. There weren't makeup schools. There were hardly any books on makeup, and there wasn't the internet. There wasn't YouTube videos. I went to the local library and found a book on stage makeup by Richard Corson, which is a really good book. The very first time I made myself up, and I tell this story all the time, but I was a painfully shy kid. I pretty much stayed in my bedroom. I couldn't look at a person in the eyes when I talked to him, and the very first time I made myself up, and I got some just white grease paint and black grease paint, made my face white and put black grease paint around my eyes, and looked in the mirror, and that face looking back at me wasn't my face. And I could do things that I couldn't do when I didn't have this shit smeared on my face, And it really showed me the power of having a different appearance, And I think that's something that's magical about makeup. When you have a really good actor and a really good makeup, and they're sitting in that chair. It's a long, painful process for everybody, And
it's also part of, oddly, it's part of the magic of Halloween. That kids get to wear a mask and they can't be themselves. Yeah, there's something very primal about some kind of
being hidden like that. Yeah. But when you see that, when you see that you're an old man or whatever you are, that different face looking back at you through your eyes, it's you know who you are then, and you're never going to give that same performance, I think, with motion capture dots on your face,
No. Bob and Kathy Burns were sort of adjunct parents to you as well. And
they were. Bob,
who I just saw last week.
Did you? Great.
Yeah.
I think he's coming tomorrow to the art show, actually.
Oh, good. Yeah. He's a good egg.
They're both great. I had read about Bob in my Monster magazines.
Sure.
And
you axed for it.
Yes. And I went to Don Post Studios when I was 13. When I turned 13, it was kind of a big year. I was going to be a teenager, and my parents asked me, if what they could do that would be special for my birthday. And this is right when the Universal tour started. And I said, I'd really like to go to Universal and tour the studio. And in my little kid brain, I was going to hop off the tram or whatever it was going to be and run to the makeup department and get a job, But so anyways, we drove from Covina to Universal, and, we got off on Cahuenga, off the Ventura Freeway, and I had seen Don Post on television just a few days before that, talking about how his company, where he makes these cool masks, was near Universal Studios. So I said, "Hey, Dad, can we stop at a phone booth which is, I don't think they exist anymore, pay phones,
I don't think they do either.
And look up and see if we can find Don Post Studios." And it was listed. So again, I was really shy still. I asked my dad if he'd call, and my dad called up, again, having great parents, said, my son Ricky, really likes monsters and makes masks and would like to visit. We've driven out here and we're in the area. Would it be possible? And they said, yeah, come on by. So we went by Don Post Studios.
So
they gave me a tour, and on the wall in Don Post Studios was a picture of Bob Burns in his Mad Mummy costume and Kogar, his gorilla suit, and it had his phone number. And so I wrote it down, and then later, I talked my dad into calling Bob, because again I couldn't do it. So it was the same thing. My son Ricky makes masks, and he read about you in the magazines and would really like to meet you. And they said, sure, come on by. So we went to their duplex on Valley Street in Burbank. That was this little teeny place. packed with really cool stuff.
Yeah, there is Bob and Kathy Burns. If you don't, there is a documentary that you can get VOD called Beast Wishes about Bob and Kathy Burns. See it. They are two incredibly wonderful people. It is the definition of a lid for every pot. That these two people found each other, and they have. It's a house like every other house
except it's full of like amazing stuff.
The King Kong maquette from 1933,
the time machine,
the flying saucer from the day the Earth stood still.
Just all this cool stuff, but
in his house.
But anyways, they took this. They let this kid and his parents come, and showed me his stuff. He showed me how to do a mortician's wax gash on my arm, and told me where he got the materials and stuff, and it was just great. And they became like my second parents, and they've been friends. I met them when I was 13. I'm like this far away from being 65. I'm not good at math because I didn't go to school. I made masks, so but it's been a long time. I've known them. They've been really close, good friends.
But we just saw the birds too. We went and started Sinistria.
Yes. Yeah, we did.
I hadn't seen that in decades.
With dates.
Yeah.
We both had dates.
We did have dates.
That movie does not age well.
It doesn't. And the thing that really struck me is the deadliest thing in that movie is not birds. It's smoking. Because everyone who smokes dies in that movie. Like Suzanne Plachette is a known smoker.
That's really true.
And there's that one scene, which in the past was horrific, but this time was very funny to me, where the gas is leaking, and there's just some dude with a cigar by his car standing ankle deep in gasoline. And they're all shouting for almost a full minute, like, hey, mister, don't do that. And he looks and just goes, I don't know what that's about, and throws a match in the gasoline and blows up.
Movies have really changed, and I shit on Alfred Hitchcock with great love of Alfred Hitchcock, and the full knowledge that he's made perfect movies. But The Birds has logic holes that you can drive an aircraft carrier through. Chief among them, the scene where all the kids are in the school. And they see outside the school
a building that's built to withstand a nuclear blast.
Yes, exactly. They're in a big brick schoolhouse, and they look outside the school and see that the birds are massing on the playground. And the belief is, we have to get the kids out of here.
Yeah.
No, out of here is where the danger is.
Yeah.
We have to keep the kids in here, and we're fine.
Yeah, the only way that plan would be somewhat good is if their plan was to get them out of there by running around the building and back into the building. Because that's wherever they were in the city, that's where they should have been going.
Yeah, exactly.
And the first half of that is the closest Hitchcock ever got to like making a screwball comedy. It's like a weird bringing up baby for the first 70 minutes of that movie.
The first 40 minutes of that movie is Tippi Hedren's playing a prank.
Yeah, and it's like, but it's kind of like a flirty prank.
Yeah, and that's also the beginning of the bad logic, that this person would drive 2 hours to play a prank on someone, and it's just the whole thing. And then the birds are in the school. The kids are in the school, so they run outside to where the birds are.
Yep.
And there's no real ending to it. They just leave. What happens at the end? They drive away.
I kind of like the things that I picked up on at this time were where people who saw that movie when it first ran probably had similar thoughts to we did and go, this 2 minutes should be a whole movie. So like the siege stuff, it's like Night of the Living Dead.
Right.
And then all the nature run amok stuff. And then even the stuff like when the woman's like, you brought this here, you caused this. Yeah. Like that's like, oh, it's The Mist and a bunch of other things, And so when you see those sort of branching of all the ideas that are in there that were expanded on later, like that's very interesting to me.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's not explained at all, which I forget who said this.
By the way, I have the book by the guy who wrote the script.
Is it very different?
I will give you the book. I haven't read it in a long time. The guy's name is Evan Hunter, and it's called Me and Hitch.
Okay.
But it is fascinating how, and right on the heels of Psycho, which is like a fucking watch.
Yeah.
That movie is so specific and beautiful.
Do you think that's Robert Bloch though, and not the writer of this book? Do you think that was some of the credit?
Yeah, I mean, there's a problem. the problems with the birds are the script.
Yeah.
It's not the direction.
Oh, it looks great.
Yeah.
And it's paced well.
Right.
And yeah.
But you have to blame Alfred Hitchcock because he also, I don't think anything got into that script that he didn't go do that, then do that, do that, do that.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, it just ends, and someone described it as a tone poem.
Yeah.
It's more just like a weird. And was Marnie after the birds or before the birds?
After, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
That was the second one with Tippi Hedren, and then she said, "I'm not doing this with you again."
Anymore. It also took me a bit out of it how much she looks like Melanie Griffith in that movie, and her character's named Melanie.
Yeah, that is really weird.
It's really bizarre.
And just how much, and this is sad in the great way, that it's just like she should have a big sign on around her neck that says "Not Grace Kelly."
Yeah.
And Rod Steiger and Rod.
She's disgraceful Kelly.
Yeah, and Rod Taylor should have a big sign that says "Not Cary Grant."
Yeah.
No, it really is like it's like the David Soul TV movie remake of Casablanca.
But I love the David Soul Salem's Lot.
Is that a remake of Salem's Lot?
No, there isn't. David Soul the main guy in the 78 Toby Hooper?
That's what I mean, the original Salem's Lot.
Oh, yeah.
With Lance Kerwin.
Yeah, Lance Kerwin.
All things Lance Kerwin. Yeah. We'll be back with more All Things Lance
Kerwin talk. He's in jail right now.
No.
Yep, moved to Hawaii, became a religious priest, had a harem of underage women, and then went to, he may be out by this point. But,
wow.
Yeah. That scene cut from Salem's Lot where he just pisses all over that kid who gets in his bed. It's a crossover movie. I want to see someone do a supercut to edit Salem's Lot and The Lonesome Runner into one movie so he's the same character. That's why he's pissing himself, because there are fucking vampires and he doesn't sleep. He's just in his bed.
My dead friend is floating outside my bedroom window.
I'm going to piss the bed. I'm in bed and there's a dead friend.
And then the parents come in later. They see the pee in the bed. They open up the window. The dead friend is still there. They hand him the sheet and he tucks the sheet into the window. I got him again. Floats off.
It's just a big prank. He floated 2 hours to play that prank on him.
Talk about editor, people always don't. It's very frustrating when getting notes and things.
I bet.
They're often great. And I've talked about my own experience. Stand Against Evil premiering on Halloween night at 10 o'clock on IFC to be rerun on Tuesday, November 2nd, and then every Wednesday.
Get your trick-or-treating done and your treats checked before it starts. Mm-hmm. You don't want to die of poisoning halfway through.
It's not scary funny, it's funny scary. Or is it scary funny? But long story longer, Stephen King, when he wrote the first draft of Salem's Lot, had a giant subplot that along with the master, there was a giant infestation of rats into Salem's Lot, which is taken right from Nosferatu.
Yeah.
And Stoker's book. And his editor just goes, you don't need to get rid of it. Just take it out. It's slowing you down. It's hanging you up. Good note.
It's totally better. Yeah. I love that made for TV movie. That's one of the scariest things. And that's another thing I try to watch on Halloween every year around that season.
One of my favorite comedies, Bad Santa.
Yep.
There was the version that came out, and then Terry Zwigoff released the director's cut, which was his version before the studio made him do reshoots.
Right.
And blah, blah, blah. All deference to Terry Zwigoff. I kind of like the studio version.
Yeah, because Batter Santa was, I think, his version. Right?
Yeah.
I also agree. The studio version can be better.
The boxing scene's really funny. Yeah. I really enjoyed it.
Donnie Darko's a prime example. Like that movie I saw in the theater, loved it. And then he released that director's cut. And then every movie he did after that, I was like, oh, that was a mistake.
The
thing I liked was a mistake.
Yeah. Apocalypse Now, Redux. Not as good as Apocalypse Now.
No. But the thing...
nothing really changes in the movie. The Ridley Scott, the cleanup of Blade Runner.
Right.
Where they reshoot the ending and they reshoot Joanna Cassidy instead of the blatantly obvious stunt double.
Yeah.
And it's alarming that she was able to do that.
Yeah.
So good.
I did a screening of that movie with her and she told that story.
Me.
Yeah. She looked the same.
Kidding me.
Yeah. She was amazing. Yeah.
That's an improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's rare that is able to work.
Now, I'm assuming you've read
Durando Dream of Electric Sheep?
No. We all read it.
Yeah.
I think, the book about Blade Runner's resuscitation.
Yep. Yeah.
And there's that big story about they found this work print and they had this screening of it at the New Art. Yeah. And I was there.
Wow.
I was at that screening.
Wow.
I didn't know it was a big historical event. I just heard, they found a director's work print of Blade Runner. They're showing it at the New Art. And the only reason I really remember it, obviously, is there is it still has a lot of temp music in it. Mm-hmm. And there's giant chunks of Jerry Goldsmith's Planet of the Apes track
right.
in the soundtrack of that cut of Blade Runner. And that's what I remember specifically.
That's amazing.
But but I was at that. I was at that screening.
I've been getting asked to do a lot of like Q&As and stuff at conventions. That's where I did the thing with Joanna Cassidy, and I did a live commentary track with Lewis Smith for Buckaroo Banzai.
Right.
And that Buckaroo Banzai has my favorite trailer in the ending where they're all walking towards the camera.
Yeah.
And he told me a great thing, which ruined it a little bit for me, but it's kind of great. They did it to Uptown Girl. So now every time I see it, it's all I can hear. And and it's like, yep, that's the Uptown Girl, all right. So imagine the Jerry Goldsmith score plays in your head when you watch those scenes in Blade Runner.
Well, there's that great story, and that's in film, however you get there, like the famous story of Greta Garbo when she played Joan of Arc or whatever, and she's just staring off into the distance, and the director said, "Don't think of anything, just look at that X."
Yeah,
and people
read everything.
Well, they read everything into it. Well, that was the original film experiment that I think it was Sergei Eisenstein did.
Oh, well, what do you think of this person? Are they sad?
They showed pizza, they showed a baby coffin, and all that stuff.
Pizza, baby
by the way,
coffin.
if you've ever been to Baby Coffin Pizza in Belmont, it's really amazing.
Well, Little Caesars had that promotion for a while.
Little Caesars.
Coffin baby.
God bless Little Caesars.
But there's no explanation in the birds, which is what I like. And it's almost
that's really true.
That you can interpret anything you want to it. And I forget who said this, and it might even been Stephen King and Dance Macabre, but the difference, and this isn't, I don't 100% agree with this, but the difference between sci-fi and horror is explanation. And you could have the same thing happening, but
that's
if you
really
say it's an alien versus we don't know what the fuck this is.
That's really interesting.
And that's what
I got to reread that. I don't think I've read that since it came out.
Whenever anyone asks me about comedy, I recommend that book to them because the structure of comedy and horror are exactly the same.
Absolutely.
As well,
as you will see in Stand Against Evil.
But that book helps you understand comedy better because he couches it in the frame of horror, which more people tend to understand.
Absolutely.
So it's always like, if you throw the cat out and you jump scare, that's like making a rape joke. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like they'll get a reaction, but people are kind of mad about it.
Well, I got to say, On Writing has some of the best advice about just life.
Yeah.
I mean, that book is unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
He's so fucking good.
I wish he wrote more nonfiction. And I also just want him to do a book of movie reviews because in Dance Macabre, it's sort of autobiographical about his monster kid growing up.
Right.
But he talks about Tourist Trap, which to this day is the scariest movie I've ever seen and is PG.
Yes.
But it's not intended to be PG. I mean,
right.
Charles Band produced it, and David Schmoller did it. And I think it's a better Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Right.
And it's terrifying. Chuck Connors is terrifying.
Yeah, I think a lot of it springboards off of music, like you said. It's like I think that's kind of the bellwether. It happens a little bit before comedy does. And I think, I don't know, but it did, I have to say, coming out of the 70s, which was like kind of like music wise, it was this arena rock.
Yeah.
Where they were kind of in their own way making movies. If you look at like what Alice Cooper was doing or any band that had a big concept, there was kind of this attitude like, we can't make movies, but we're pretty much or Sgt. Pepper actually is when it started, but it was kind of like the Beatles were saying, this album is a movie pretty much.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And so it seemed like the 70s when you look at things like Kiss or Journey or even like...
Yes.
Yes is a great example because of the album covers, but they were evoking these other worlds that were pretty much movies. I think that's the way I was kind of looking at them.
Yeah, I agree.
And then kind of like punk rock happened, and it all kind of collapsed on itself. It's like I remember the day it dawned on me that prog rock and arena rock were dying, and punk rock was happening. And it was something on like I went to this college in Minneapolis called Bethel, and it was like there's this bulletin board, and it was like there was like an article about Emerson, Lake and Palmer had to cancel their tour because they were traveling with a 200-piece orchestra or something. And they were acoustically tuning the arenas to accommodate this live orchestra. Right. Probably not too, I'm probably exaggerating. Maybe it's 50-piece orchestra. And then right next to it was something about the Ramones. Somebody posted something and I go, oh, I get it now. It's like, it's not sustainable.
Right.
And punk rock is really just stripped down and like you can do it. It's really DIY. And I kind of tried to do that with what I was doing, where it was like I wanted to realize ideas, and it was like that really helped me go. It's like garage. I'm like a garage prop comedian. I went and make the stuff and put it on stage, and everybody kind of understood that.
Right.
But I kind of got that from music, like what was going on, or I don't know who else. B-52s, I think.
Yeah.
They're kind of like
there's a lot
funny.
there's a lot of irony to it. And
Yeah.
There's a lot of I think that's really accurate, and it goes into politics. It's the nature of systems. They're constructed, they flourish, and then they decay, and then they're destroyed.
Yeah, and then you can see what's that song? There's a crack in everything. That's where the light comes in.
I don't know that
what's
song.
his name? Leonard Cohen.
Right.
And it's kind of true. It's like
What a great line.
Yeah, I know. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in, and it's true because it's like when you start to see. There's principalities that kind of grow and are popular, and at a certain point they get lazy and bloated, and then they fall apart,
Right,
and then you
yeah.
can kind of see a way in. I think that's kind of how it was in my life, and what I kind of saw, because when you're outside of it, like we were, you don't understand the wiring. Like if you're, like I have friends that were born into families that are in show business, and it's much more kind of laid out in front of you, like, well, you can do this kind of job or this kind of job or this kind of job. You just pick one that fits your personality. But when you're outside of it and you want to be in it, it's not clear at all.
Right.
You just have to kind of start.
And so you had a lot of success, and then you sort of quit.
Oh yeah, and I forgot to tell you about the
Oh, yeah.
hotel. Okay, so so this is
we started talking about yacht rock.
Yeah, during when I was doing SNL, they always used to have this thing at the end of Saturday Night Live. Guests of Saturday Night Live stay at the Berkshire Place Hotel.
Right.
The announcer would come on, and they'd have a little card, and they'd have a little video of it.
Remember it well.
People toasting, having dinner, and I got to do SNL. And I guess what I wanted to say is I started by getting on Letterman, and I didn't get asked back on. So I think first I did Letterman, and about 8 or 9, 10 months went by, nothing happened. But then I got the Young Comedian special. And then suddenly, however that stuff worked back then, they both SNL and Letterman wanted me to do stuff. And so they were kind of fighting at the time, and they came to me and said, the people at Letterman said, we want you to stop doing SNL, and we'll do an exclusive. We'll make you a series regular. And this is after I'd done SNL.
Right.
And I didn't want to do that. It seemed unfair.
Right.
Like I wanted to do both. But they kind of maintained that. So I think I did SNL. I alternated and did like 5 SNLs and 5 or 6 Lettermans back and forth. But prior to that, my first SNL, I had this bit in my act, and I'd go, how much time do I have left? Which is a common thing when you're an act on the road, because everything is based on time. If you're an opening act, 15 minutes, middle acts, 20 minutes, headliners like an hour or more. So you have to be alert to that. And in a club, I'd go, how much time do I have left? And the guy would get on the microphone and go, you have 15 minutes left. And I took out these stack of dynamite with a clock face on it, and I'd set it, and I go, I guess we've all got 15 minutes.
Right.
And this is back in the day when you could joke about such things, and everybody felt safe enough to go, well, that's clearly absurd. No one's going to put a bomb where I am.
Yeah. And in your other, even in retrospect, if I'm not mistaken, it was a cartoonishly obvious prop.
Yes.
Stick of dynamite.
Absolutely.
I mean, it might as well have been a bowling ball with a fuse.
Yes,
you
right.
stole from Simon Bar Sinister.
Yeah, like an anarchist bomb, right, that I'm about to light. Yeah, I'm trying to light it.
An anarchist bomb.
So I had that prop, and the set designer, Akira, for SNL, said, this is looking kind of shabby. We'll make you a new one. So they made me a really nice big one. And it was strange, but the clock, when I got it, it was ticking. Like it was ticking. And I would just go, how do you turn this off? Somebody must have wound it up, and it was just going to wind itself down. Right. So I did the show, I did the bit. And then this is my first SNL. And I think they gave you a limo. Like they say,
Right.
You have a limo for the whole night. And of course, there's a SNL party. And they were famous. Like even I knew that they had really great parties. And this was the party.
And this is interesting because this is 80.
This is like, this is like 1982 or 83
Where there's
or
literally
84 or something.
Where New York there were literally plows moving the cocaine through the streets.
Yeah. And this is the party where if you see images of who's the little girl from E.T., what's her name?
Drew Barrymore?
Yeah. You ever see that famous picture of Drew Barrymore passed out on a table sleeping when she's a little girl? She was there. She was like with her mom. Her mom, I don't know what was going on, but that was that night. And so I was at that, and it was a really late party, and I got home like at 5, and for some reason I had a really early flight it was crazy. I don't know why they did that, but so I had like an hour to pack up, and I'm looking around, and I look at this bomb, and it's ticking, and I go, I can't bring this on the plane.
Right.
And so I tore the clock face off. I tore the sticks of dynamite apart so it wouldn't look like anything. I threw it in the trash in the hotel room, and I left. And I got home that night, and my manager calls me, and she goes, "Did you leave a bomb in the Berkshire Place Hotel?"
and I said, I had some chili at Wendy's, I don't know what you mean.
I said, I guess I did. It was a prop. It was a prop. And she goes, well, they evacuated the Berkshire Place Hotel, and it's in the news. It's going to be in the news. And this is really bad. And they want you to come to New York. The FBI wants you to come to New York tomorrow. And I just said, I can't. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to stay put. And it was on the front page of the Post and all that stuff. And it was crazy. And then in the middle of the week, she calls me and she goes,
so how does that go? Does your manager call the FBI and go, he's not feeling it?
Yeah. I don't know what she said, but I just said, I'm not going to do that. I knew enough that would be more of a liability
absolutely.
Than to stay home. And so it all tracked for them, and they let it go. And fortunately, because I had the bomb on the show, so there's evidence. And so anyway, she calls me midweek and goes, oh, this could have been a good thing. They want you to come back next week. They want to book you the next. So do you have like another 10 minutes or whatever long? I said, yeah, I can do that. And so I came back the very next week because they saw it as a positive thing. The show got more press than it ever got. And so I was on there. I got on the show the very next week. But after that, it was really funny. Ever since that, they then changed that ending to most guests of Saturday Night Live stay at the Berkshire Place Hotel because I got banned from that hotel. So that's
you stayed at Penn Station.
I did, yeah. And I can't remember who the band was. I think it was the Cure.
Oh wow, that's
no.
cool.
It was the Fix. The Fix.
Yeah.
Not as cool as the Cure.
Cool as the Cure.
The Fix was the band. And then the other one was...
Are We Ourselves?
No. It was even weirder. It was Mick Fleetwood Zoo was the band for my first appearance. Yeah, it's really crazy.
That's grim.
Well, something I should have said to begin with, too. I mean, this, if you read the credits, you'll see V. Neal's name up there in the film. V was in charge of the makeup on the whole film. The only thing I did was design the Bela Lugosi appliance. I did the initial tests. We made the appliances. We worked with V in the beginning, but I actually wasn't on the set during the filming because I was doing another film. Something I rarely ever do is 2 films at the same time, but I just had to do this Ed Wood, and this is the only way I can make it work. But
what was the other film you were doing?
The other film I did was a film called Wolf, Jack Nicholson and Michelle Pfeiffer.
Oh, yes, sure.
Yeah, I know.
I have a...
Yeah. But
I saw Wolf the night of... I just remember, I saw Wolf the night of the O.J. Bronco chase. And we were at the Cinerama Dome, and everybody was like, we can't go into the movie. O.J.'s in a Bronco. And I was like, I remember this, guys, O.J.'s going to be dead. We really should go see Wolf.
Yeah, so V did the other characters. She did the makeups. I actually did Johnny Depp's teeth when he pulls the teeth out, and he actually wore dentures through the whole movie too. He wanted, because Ed Wood had the fake teeth, so we made teeth for him. And we were Vincent D'Onofrio wanted to wear appliances to be Orson Welles, and we made some. But I just said I don't think it's necessary. I think you look enough like him, and we talked him out of it. But the Lugosi I had,
and that voice is Maurice LaMarche.
Yeah. And Vincent wasn't too happy about that.
I can't imagine why.
Yeah. I had a Lugosi life cast that I got from Don Post Studios. At the time that all that was happening, Vern Langdon, who used to work at Don Post Studios, was at Don Post Studios. So I called up Vern, and I said, Vern, do you know if the life mask that you guys had was from Return of the Vampire? And he said, yes. And he goes, as a matter of fact, I have the original that still has some of Bela Lugosi's eyebrows and a couple little hairs here and there. He goes, I'll sell it to you if you want. I just thought that would be so cool to have this original cast. And I thought, if I have Bela's eyebrows, maybe we can clone him someday, But so I asked him how much he wanted for it, and he said, I'll get back to you. And then he came back with a ridiculous price. And I thought, well, maybe I can get Tim to buy it. And when he found out what it was, he went, no fucking way. I'm going to spend that much. But it was, I don't know what's happened to it. Vern has since passed, and I don't know where that life cast has gone, but I wish I had it.
When I lived in San Francisco, I would frequently go on a radio station called Live 105, which is the modern rock station. Everything from the Smiths to Morrissey.
Excellent.
And I was on there one morning with Stephen King.
Wow.
And I don't know, I was a guest DJ a lot, and I interviewed a lot of people as a guest DJ. It was the Alex Bennett show.
Okay.
Alex Bennett, who completely predicted satellite radio in the late 80s.
He's like the Arthur C. Clarke of radio.
He really is. I got to tell you, credit where credit is due. He was late 80s. He's like pointing to his computer, like, it's all going to be on computer. I'm like, all right, spaceman.
Yeah.
And I remember I interviewed Joey and Marky Ramone on it. I had a lot of people on it, a lot of Bay Area porn chicks.
Yeah, of course.
John Cleese. Stephen King. I don't know if I was a DJ or just there that day.
Do you have any of these?
I could. No, I have photos of them, and I can. I'm sure they're out there someplace. Long story longer. Stephen King was promoting Maximum Overdrive,
his directorial debut.
Right, and I interviewed the Ramones when they were promoting
Pet Sematary.
Pet Sematary.
Maybe their best song.
Pretty
my
good.
favorite.
Yeah, it's pretty hummable. And I remember Stephen King was really funny. He was really self-effacing. And I do remember asking him, would you say this is the scariest movie? I said, do you think this will be the best movie of the summer? And he said, I'll say here, it's the loudest.
Yeah. I was reading old
Which is really funny.
It's accurate. I was reading old Cinefantastiques, as I do on Saturday. And there was one from the set of that. And the crew shirts he had for that movie said, what the fuck are we doing?
That's fantastic.
So everyone on that set crew, that's what they had on the shirt for Maximum Overdrive.
Well, it's funny. In the book on writing, he talks about how he got the job to direct this movie. And he's like, sure. And then he got the job to realized 2 days into it that he didn't want to be a director.
Yeah.
I also learned that on directing a short movie. Fortunately for me, it was a 3-day shoot, so I only had 1 day.
You weren't working with Dino De Laurentiis.
No, it was a little short movie, and oddly, the guy, the DP was a guy named Victor Nelli, and I was like, "You do it."
Yeah,
I wrote it.
You can do
it. And he's now a big TV director.
Oh, there you go.
It's really funny.
You give him a start. You got to tell that story to him. I looked at him and I said, "I see something in you, kid."
He jokes about it.
You can do this.
Whenever I see him, he jokes. You gave me my start.
Yeah. I handed him the canvas seat and I said, "You are doing this."
Yeah, but he realized that he didn't want to direct, and he started writing a book while shooting the movie. Yeah. Which, if you've ever directed, it's a lot of fucking work.
But Dana, once again, what you're forgetting is cocaine.
Yeah, which I did not have the benefit of.
Yeah,
and I don't know what book it is. It's in on writing, he talks about it, but like he would shoot his 12-hour day and then he would go back to the hotel. And instead of watching dailies, he would just write. But writing for 4 hours was creatively sustaining to him.
Yeah.
It got him through the movie because you've got to have something that
you want to do.
Feed your engine. Yeah. And that just you feel like creatively engaged in, and that can, it's sort of like the one for me, one for them.
Right.
It's like, okay, I can do this. I'll do this for you if I can do this for me.
In that same issue, the direct Mark Lester, I think, who's the director of Firestarter, talks about how Stephen King ruined that movie because he's on the set all the time and all this stuff. And the really crazy thing, they let Stephen King do a rebuttal. So he has this like 2-page rebuttal that's so brilliantly written and folksy and nice that it's just like, no, this is what happened. You might remember it wrong. I thought you did a good job. You got hampered by, and it's just amazing because I'm like, I can't imagine a forum now, even though it's easier than ever, where you would have the director and the writer arguing over a thing in a very civilized, nice way.
Well, Greg Nicotero told me this story. He had to go to Maine and was doing something with Stephen King. I'm remembering something about this wrong.
Yeah. It's a Pet Cemetery. They shot it up there.
No, it was recently.
Okay.
Him and Frank Darabont went to see Stephen King about something, or he was there and they went by to say, something. Ended up going to see the movie The Descent.
Yeah.
And The Descent ends with a hand coming up out of the ground, just like in Carrie.
Yeah.
And so they're in the theater, and Stephen King's like really dorky. He has like a bumper sticker on his car that says like, "My son sells drugs to your honor student."
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah,
he's just like a completely normal guy.
Also, wonder what he hands out on Halloween. Does anyone ever?
He doesn't participate in Halloween. He's never home. Wow. I think that he always would take a trip on Halloween. They would go to like Europe or something.
Probably good
because he just couldn't deal.
Yeah.
Which is, I think that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Anyway, the hand comes up out of the ground, and there's this moment of like, shit, I was going to be pissed off because they just looked at from Carrie. And the lights came up, and he turned and goes, "Wasn't that great? It was just like in Carrie. The way the hand came up, that was great." And it was just like, I always think of that story because it's just like a great way to look at life. What if you looked at this way?
Right.
Might not be a terrible thing.
Yeah.
What if you just looked at it this way?
You're looking at the influence you've had on the world at that point. And
it's just a way to perceive stuff. Like this is sort of serious, but like, Mila Nurmi, Vampira, lived to hold a grudge against Cassandra Peterson, Elvira. That got her out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
And what if you just looked at it you did get fucked over by KABC.
Yeah.
You did. But that's not going to change. You being angry is not going to fix it. And what if you just, I only knew her for 15 years, but like, what if you could have had a good time in those 15 years?
Yeah.
You didn't have to be muttering to yourself all the time for 15 years.
Right.
And Cassandra Peterson, she's an actress.
Yeah.
She's making a living.
Yeah.
She doesn't mean you any harm.
Yeah. Yeah. And even that,
so I've never met her. She is, by all accounts, a lovely human
she's
being.
Incredibly lovely. Yeah. And it was like, you probably would have got along.
I know she's friends with Paul Rubens.
Yeah.
He's a lovely human being.
Yeah. She was in the Groundlings. And, so
she's just making a living.
But some people, again, maybe it's a Massachusetts thing because from Massachusetts.
She is not Finland.
No. There's that fueled by spite.
Yep.
I will get up every fucking day and live a miserable existence as long as it's 1 minute longer than you do.
Yep, absolutely. Eat my popcorn. Somebody wants to say, like, go to the movies. I'm going to eat my popcorn like it's a bag of nails.
Yeah, yeah, and it's they need it, I guess. But at the same time, if you just let go, you could have enjoyed that time. And
powered by rage.
Yeah,
that should really be the state motto of Massachusetts.
Oh yeah, fueled by spite.
Fueled by spite.
Letting the license plates go fuck yourself.
Go fuck yourself. And that was so many people's last words is like, fuck you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're not being like, I'm so sorry. It was like, this is your fucking fault. I want to give them something that they can't sleep because of.
Dying words. Hey, queer.
Yeah. That hair makes you look queer. There's we used to live in Somerville, Mass, which is the shittiest
place.
As did I.
Yeah.
Which is now like the Brooklyn is kind of hip.
I know. It's so weird.
Very weird. But we had this halfway house across the street, and there was a woman who used to sit on the porch all day and would just go, "Baby," and say the weirdest shit. Like she would go, murder me, and say the weirdest stuff all day. So we called her baby. We didn't know her name was. So like 2 years later, I think CBS or ABC did this documentary show about emergency rooms in Massachusetts. And they'd shoot like a whole night in emergency rooms. And one episode, they're wheeling this woman in and she's screaming in pain. I don't know what had happened to her. And she's injured. And as she goes around the corner, there's like a medical student there and she's wailing in pain, completely stops screaming, points at him and goes, "Do something with that hair," and then goes back to screaming as they go. And the guy, and it's a documentary, he looks at the camera and is like, "Whoa, what?" It's amazing. It's amazing. And she has a TV credit and I don't.
I was a beautiful snapshot of Massachusetts. I was driving to Logan Airport, late for a flight. Was with my girlfriend at the time, who grew up just outside of Berkeley, and was not prepared to deal with Massachusetts at all.
Few are.
We literally we were visiting Boston years ago, and we were going to see Nelson Mandela speak on the Esplanade, and we were in a cab the day before. And a cabbie went, "I'd steer clear of the Esplanade tomorrow, boy. They're going to be out in force. Oh, they're going to want it all now that their troublemakers out." Just like, it was just like, so like you couldn't have written it any worse. So I'm on my way to the airport. I'm late. I get pulled over by a statey. Now my oldest brother is at the time worked for the correctional department. He ran the stress unit for Mass Correctional.
Oh,
and so I had his business card in my wallet by my driver's license in case I got pulled over. And so he asked for my license, and I open it up, and he takes my wallet, and he says, "California." And then he sees my brother's card, and my girlfriend's like, looking at me, and he goes, "Where you going?" I'm just late for a flight. I'm trying to get to Logan. And he just throws the wallet at me, and he goes, "Jesus Christ, go through the tunnel, get on the expressway, and screw."
Yeah.
And he walks back.
Which is another phrase people don't have outside of Massachusetts. Like, we're going to get out of here. We're going to screw.
Yeah, go screw.
A friend of mine, he was from somewhere else, and he goes, "I got really confused. I was at a party, and my friend was like, 'This is no fun. Let's screw.'" And he was like, "Excuse me?"
What?
He's like, "Well, let's go screw."
Well, the other one, there's the big three. Bubla.
Yep, Bubla.
So Don't I.
Yep.
Which is good. I like that movie. So Don't I.
No, sir.
And Cocked.
Yeah.
Which really is
and I was bullshit.
Frequently misunderstood. I was bullshit. But like, I remember my parents said, "Let's go get," oh God, I was cocked.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't even know where that came from.
No, who knows? But if you find out, I'll be bullshit that you found out instead of me.
Well, for all of you for all you kids going trigger, and by the way, if you don't know, cocked means inebriated.
Yeah.
And for all, it might be a derivative of cocktail.
Yeah, or half cocked.
Yeah.
Full cocked.
But full cocked. But for everyone going trick or treating this year, I hope you get, and I mean this for you kids.
Yeah.
May you get cocked on candy.
Yeah. Candy cocked.
Just go out there and get candy cocked.
Yeah.
Tell your mom. The good people at the Dana Gould Hour said, go out there and get candy cocked.
Which means you'll be awash in Charleston Chews.
You will, if you're anything like me, you will be eating fun-sized Snickers long after it stops being fun.
I guess it kind of ended for me when I'd gotten to do all these shows. It was all I was really interested in doing was Letterman, and Saturday Night Live was a complete bonus. I was really getting tired of the road. I was endeavoring to really keep producing material, and I just got really burnt out by it. And then, but prior to that, Brandon Tartikoff approached me and wanted me to be in this Michael J. Fox show called High School USA, which was kind of like a knockoff of Animal House. Mm-hmm. And
let me guess, you'd be the nerd.
Well, yeah, it's true. And it was like, I was, and it was just, I read the script and I could tell they were shoehorning me into this spot. And I didn't think it was funny. And I just kind of like thought, I just said no to them. I just said, I don't think I should do this. I don't think it's right for me. And they came back and doubled the money.
Yeah.
And it was weird, but I got kind of offended. I realized, I get it. It's like my opinion doesn't matter in the face of this, because
we want you.
They can keep
monkey.
They can keep offering me more and more money.
Yeah.
So it was like 6. It was 5 or 6 on the air like agreement, whatever that's called. They made the deal for 6 for sure. And I just said no to it, and I realized that I didn't really want to be on a sitcom. I also read for the Woody part on Cheers.
Oh, that's fun.
And so that kind of fit, but I didn't really, at the time, when you're 22 or something, like I didn't think any sitcom was funny. I didn't even get that Cheers was great.
Yeah. And you're immortal.
Yeah. I didn't want to. So I don't know if I had anything to do with that. I don't even think I got called back for that, but I just wasn't that into it. So I got to the end and I go, there's not really anything for me if I don't want to be a stand-up, because I don't want to be on a sitcom. I don't know if I'd be that effective as a sitcom writer. There really wasn't anything else. So I decided to stop. So I quit and moved back to Minneapolis and just tried to sit and, just tried to take a break and try to figure out what to do next. So I just did different stuff. I was interested in being a toy inventor, so I got to know some really cool people in Minneapolis. And there were quite a few interesting designers in Minneapolis because Tonka was there at the time, and they were really active and doing a lot of cool stuff. And
but that's what you're just sort of glossing over. That's a huge, like so many people would think, like you're in show business, you get on SNL, you get on Letterman, you're really hot, you jump on a sitcom, and you're set. And you at 22, even if it was
I was like 20, I was 24 by 24, at least 24 or 25 by that time. Yeah, but
and you just thought, no, I'm not gonna do this.
Yeah, it's something made me feel really self-conscious about. And this could go back to the Joe Piscopo thing, where it was kind of like I'm not an actor, so I didn't know if I could sell other people's stuff. If you're really, when you get to know actors, their whole thing is about that can do. Like, I can embody any line you write and make it work. And I didn't think I could do it.
There's a giant difference between comedians who know how to act and actors.
Yeah.
In the same way that there's a giant difference between stand-ups and actors who do stand-up.
Right.
And that's one of those things, just to follow the thread. I don't look like Stephen King, but my dad looks like Stephen King. And I look like my dad. Charlie Sheen and Emilio Estevez both look like Martin Sheen, but they don't look like each other.
We'll be right back with Dana Gould's podcast.
If it bends, it's funny.
I forgot.
No, we're talking about to be an actor is to really. Like,
I have a theory about this because I think one thing about comedy that's weird is you have to, no matter what the comic does, you have to like them. Like comedy is about the audience signs off on a comic when they like them.
The best advice I ever got about stand-up, I had 2 pieces of advice about stand-up that changed my career, both given to me on the same night in Dallas in 1988 by Kevin Rooney. And it was because I was a very angry young man.
Yeah.
And it was, the audience wants to like you.
Yeah.
But before they do that, they want to know that you like them.
Yeah.
And that, I was a better comedian the next show.
That's awesome.
Absolutely was.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And the other one was, it's a show.
Yeah.
People got babysitters. They drove here.
Yeah, it's huge.
There's lights.
It's huge.
You're on stage. It's a show.
You almost, in a way, the thing with most comics I notice is something about them gets in the way of the audience having a good time. Something about them interferes with that. They're all ready. They're primed. They need it to be a good experience. And you have to let it happen. I was thinking about Bernie Mac, like how combative he was and everything, but you liked him. Like something about him, you just knew there's something adorable about him. Mm-hmm. And I think the best comics just figure that out. And I think it's only from just doing it so much that you kind of create a relationship with the audience that works.
Right.
It's not like you start out like, oh, you're like, you have to be adorable to survive like an infant.
Right.
But it's like you.
That's why we don't all go around killing infants.
Because they're cute.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do think that over time that you learn that or you figure that out. And the comics that have the hardest time are those that don't like allow that to happen. They don't leave any like handles for the audience to like them or kind of like say what they, and it's manifest in a million different ways. Sometimes you like someone because they're brave, or you like someone because they know themselves and they're, self-deprecating. But there's all these different handles that are available, and it only comes from just doing it over and over and over again.
It's just,
and on
you
top
figure
of
it
that,
out or you don't.
Yeah, and also having the confidence to know that this is going to work out. I think that's what makes a comic really work, is going into it going, I know at the end of this you're going to have fun, so let's just go. Let's just do this, but
you have everything that the traditional arc of a show business career would have, and you decide, nah, I'm going to go back home and maybe I'll invent toys.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what, I got to tell you, there's people like that in music. I got the idea from the Replacements kind of, like I think they had this attitude like, we have nothing except this great music. We have no position. And so that's all we have, is ultimately at the end of the day, all you have to bargain with is yourself.
Yeah.
And kind of like either I'm going to do this or I'm not going to do this. But you have no real leverage outside of that. And I think I just wasn't feeling it. And I knew that I'd feel bad if I went and did this kind of hollow, to me, being a character on a sitcom at that time, like now there's just certain sitcoms that I think you love and are great. And when people are in the middle of them, I admire them and I think it's great. But at that time, I didn't know any of that.
But also, like putting you in a sitcom and thinking it would work, and I believe me, I am the subject of a million failed attempts at this.
Right.
It's like there's this false belief that people have, like, God, that's the greatest lamp. That's the greatest lamp. Let's make it a part of this piano.
Right. That's really true. Yeah, it's really true. Yeah. And I think the difference between you and me was you are actually an actor, and I just kind of knew. I just kind of knew that. Oh man, I can't. I just have this one thing I do.
I'm a comedian who knows how to act. I am no actor.
Yeah, but
John McGinley's an actor.
But I think I didn't have that. I didn't have the chops to be versatile at all to know how to do another version of myself or my stage self. So I knew I was really limited.
I don't think if you did that, you would have ever come up with Mystery Science Theater. And it really is one of those things where, like, you just sort of followed your muse, for lack of a better term, and there are many. And it led you to this great.
Before we talk about MST, was the thing that I remember was that gig that special you did. I think it's Showtime for Cafe Wah, Dana Gould at Cafe Wah.
Yeah.
And the big conversation that I had, and I still use this as an example for people.
A special that starts with a shot of the World Trade Center and then pans down to me.
Oh, yeah. And the big conversation I remember us having was somebody wanted to film look this, because film looking was just happening, and everybody was saying, well, it's a no-brainer. It looks like Richard Pryor on the Sunset Strip, which is what everybody wants. And I remember us talking about that and kind of agreeing that's not the best place for stand-up. Stand-up has to be real crisp. We kind of,
anything that reminds you that you're not actually there is a bad thing.
Yeah, and there's this hang time in film that is not good for comedy. It's just like 10 frames or whatever the frame rate difference is. It's this hang time that makes the difference between a really good joke and not a good joke.
Yeah, I agree.
And so Pryor did it.
It's hard to hold up the most gifted practitioner of a craft as the median of how you should do it. But the Beatles did this. It's because they're the Beatles.
But that's what everybody was doing. And I wanted to say we had that same ongoing conversation at Mystery Science Theater, because some of the guys in in our group said, we got a film look this, because we're riffing on a film.
Right.
And I kind of cued off that big conversation we had where I said, no, it's got to be crisp. It's got to feel like videotape is.
Or anything with comedy, anything that takes you out of the moment kills it.
Rondo Hatton was in films, and they called him the Creeper. And this poor man had a disease, acromegaly, whatever you want to call it, and it's like a glandular disease that distorts your. If you get it when you're still growing, you grow to become a giant. But if you get it after you're full grown, your facial features distort. So he distorted, and he was a monster in the Universal films without makeup. He played the Creeper. It was first in, I think, a Sherlock Holmes movie.
And prior to the onset of the disease was a very handsome guy. He was a very well-known college football quarterback. He was like an all-American guy. Wanted to be an actor, was having a hard time. Then fate, being a cruel mistress, got a disfiguring disease, and his career took off.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was fascinated because he is, by some standards, a real monster in a sense, And I just thought he just had a cool face. So I did a Rondo mask for myself. I think it was in the 70s, a foam rubber one. It was pretty cool. And when Rocketeer was happening, I actually found out about from Dave Stevens, who did the comic book, and he was a big Rondo fan, and he knew that I did this Rondo mask, and he goes, I really want to have Rondo in the movie as well, and would be really cool if you could do the makeup. And so I was very excited by that, and Rondo wasn't actually a big man, but there was this guy named Tiny Ron who was 7'2". We felt we should exaggerate Rondo, and what do they call him Lothar in the Rocketeer? So I initially did and kind of, as you were saying too, like a mask, a full, complete, sculpture that looked almost exactly like Rondo. But I looked at it and I went, "It's too masky. It's got to be less." So then I started over again and again tried to capture the essence of him with not as much rubber on his face, but he's still pretty covered. It's a full forehead and a big kind of wraparound chin and jowls and ears, and
and for the fans, it's like that's one of those things. Like not everybody gets it, but the people that get it and really appreciate it.
Well, that's kind of, because
it's the whole point.
I'm a fanboy,
Right,
and I think I love these movies and I love that stuff, and I know there's other ones out there, and you kind of do it for them.
Yeah, you do it for them,
and it's the fanboys that I think that are, it's the Joe Dantes and the John Landises and the Guillermo del Toros and the Peter Jacksons that that use this stuff well. I think the important thing is you have to be willing to work hard. I think I got to where I got to in my career because I work hard. I mean, a lot of people go, "Oh, you're so talented, you're blah 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 blah," and it's like, mediocre talent, but I have a work ethic that when I commit to something, I work until I drop and try to do the best thing that I possibly can, and that's kind of what you have to do in the film industry. I mean, people don't realize that who aren't in the industry how hard you work. I mean, the normal day is a 12-hour day. When you're a makeup artist like me, you do it, and when you have a 3.5-hour makeup that you do before the 12-hour day starts, and then you have an hour removal time, you're putting in long days. I mean, when we did the Planet of the Apes that I was involved with, that we talked about.
The only Planet of the Apes film, really, if you ask me.
We had so many days where we were doing 20-hour days, and you have to try to go to sleep and eat and then go back to work. And I went to the production people and go, "Someone's going to die. People are going to drive home and die. You can't do this, And they did, Unfortunately, no one died, But, I mean, I think the best thing is, you have to have a passion. I mean, what helped me through it all is I was passionate about it. I love this stuff, and I still feel so lucky that I was able to make my weird little hobby, into a profession, and a profession where they gave me awards, and I have shit like this, right? I get to,
yeah, and the only thing that I've noticed in my storied career is that things lead to things, and if you do things and make things, things come of it, and if you don't do things and don't make things, then things don't come of it.
Yeah.
Rick Baker, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
This is Orson Welles, ladies and gentlemen, out of character, to assure you that the War of the Worlds has no further significance than as the holiday offering it was intended to be. The Mercury Theater's own radio version of dressing up in a sheet and jumping out of a bush and saying boo. Starting now, we couldn't soap all your windows and steal all your garden gates by tomorrow night, so we did the best next thing. We annihilated the world before your very ears and utterly destroyed the CBS. You will be relieved, I hope, to learn that we didn't mean it, and that both institutions are still open for business. So goodbye, everybody, and remember, please, for the next day or so, the terrible lesson you learned tonight. That grinning, glowing, globular invader of your living room is an inhabitant of the pumpkin patch, and if your doorbell rings and nobody's there, that was no Martian. It's Halloween.
We're so glad you made the scene. It's the Dana Gould Hour. Happy Halloween.
This has been the Dana Gould Hour, brought to you by the Internet. Music by Andy Paley, with Jake Posner behind the board. Produced by Jeff Fox. Graphic design and web production by Spencer Hunt and Segan Friend. Sound editing and post-production by Jalinda Palmer and Joe Napolitano. Hey, if you enjoyed the show, why don't you drop us a line at show@danagould.com.
This has been like an orgy.